your identity is not real. You know what I mean? Your identity is
Yeah, that's cool.
Ooh.
and so like there's a difference between you being an individual and you being your identity. Because if you participate in identities, then that's where identity politics comes from. You see what I mean?
Yes.
And then, but that's where consumerism comes from. It's all the same thing. That's what makes us manipulated because it's like our bias. It's like our personal bias.
I like it.
Smurf is an identity, by the way.
I heard there's a list of like 80.
Smurf kind. And I was just saying that because of acid.
Acid's changing his color.
Just like pixel fairy.
Like
dwarf.
a chameleon.
Is that true that some people actually are like, I am a dragon?
Yes.
Like, I do not refer to me as a man or a woman. I am a dragon.
Yes, that happens.
Yeah.
And they'll go into all this like they've always felt this way and like, you know, and like all it ends up being is they just like sometimes pretend to be a dragon. And it's like do you ever get in your covers in the bed and you just feel so cozy and you're like, oh yeah, it feels so good.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they have moments like that towards that, and they're like, "This must be who I really am." Like, imagine like inside of you being such a fucking mental chaos and like feeling bad and anxious and all this stuff, and just never quite comfortable. That you're like, it's because I'm not like actually a human being. It's because I'm actually like a dragon soul in this human body. So it's like I'm supposed to be flying around breathing fire.
Mm.
And that's why I feel the way I do. It's so uncomfortable because I'm not supposed to be here. But, you know, there's this really cool Bernard audio called Equal Money and Opposing Forces. Have you all listened to that?
I'm sure I have, but I don't know if off the top of my head.
It's such a good one. Anybody listening should watch that because it's like you just see like you have all these different forces inside of you and they're sometimes in conflict and it like you just feel kind of torn. It's like God bless you, Drake.
Allahu Akbar.
I don't think I've ever heard you say that,
the Rose
Cam.
Garden? Were you at the Rose Garden
Did
ceremony?
you guys see that Biden said tried to say inshallah in the debate?
Yeah, was that what he was trying to say?
So
I heard that, and I was like, why did he say that?
There was a tweet because they said so. Trump said something like, "I'm gonna do this," and he said, "Oh yeah, are you? Inshallah." And
yeah, I don't know if you guys
tweet
remember when he said that. I go, dude, what? I was like, what was that?
I know. I just glitched and I was like, "Oh, wait, what are they saying?"
But you heard it, right? Like when we were watching.
I heard it, and then
I heard it. Yeah.
I got context to it is because, okay, could you imagine? What do you think the reaction would be if Trump said, "Oh yeah, inshallah"? What do you think it
I
would
don't
be?
even know what that means.
Yeah, I don't know what it means.
It's
Okay,
like God willing or something.
Yeah. Basically, God willing. Like you say something like, "Oh, you know, I'll get this job, inshallah. I'll get, you know."
Okay.
I hope they have apples at the grocery store, inshallah.
But
Right?
is it like an Islamic thing? I'm guessing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Muslim, yeah.
It's an Arabic word that's used
Arabic.
within Islam. Say it's inshallah, right?
Okay.
And yeah, it means God willing. You know, if it's in God's plan, then yeah, I'll be good. You know, like I'm really excited. Like our marriage is gonna go great, inshallah, right? And so could you imagine if Trump was like, "Oh yeah, you're good, yeah, for sure, Biden, you're good. You would have done. You'll do great with the coronavirus. You'll do great running this country, inshallah, right?" It's kind of like a sarcastic use of it. What do you think the reaction would be if Trump said that?
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying. Oh, it'd be like he's
Like
pandering,
he's racist.
or he's mocking the religion, or
All right, it's like
But
xenophobic.
So you're saying
asshole.
Biden said it in a mocking? And
Islamophobe.
that's how I remember it too. It was
And
kind
yeah,
of
so
like a sarcastic.
he said it sarcastically. He's like, "Oh yeah, when? Inshallah." He said when? Inshallah? Or he didn't say inshallah. He said inshallah. It sounded awful, right?
Wait, no, that's not what he was saying.
He said
Yes.
inshallah. Yeah. He said, "When are you
Biden,
going to do
the
that?"
I
notorious
was just having
mumbler,
lunch.
said a word that sounded Arabic.
I think he was saying
Salata.
ensalada.
Yeah, that was it. Okay. Well, that takes on a whole new meaning.
That makes more sense. But the way I saw it brought back up is because somebody was tweeting, "Yep, confirmed. I reached out to Biden's campaign, and he did say that, and he used it perfectly as a sarcastic usage, like shout out Biden."
Whoa.
It was like,
It's okay that he did it. Okay. This is such a good point. Like,
classic white privilege. Jesus.
okay. I know it's like people might find it difficult to wrap their mind around
Why that would be okay.
How I could say left
Oh.
and right
Hmm.
when we're coming from like the self-perfected starting point, right? But that is the reality that we're in, that there is a left and a right. Okay. The problem is when we say left and right, it means all these different things. So when I say, if I ever use the word left, like, you know, kind of now, I'm referring to people who are just anti-Trump. That's all I mean by it. Really. It doesn't really imply anything of
True.
like your policies or anything. It just means
True.
you're against Trump. It's more of a sense of what side you're on of political correctness. So
True.
it's politically correct to be on the left. It's not politically correct to be on the right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But political correctness is not best. So that's why I think maybe some people can have the perception that like I'm a right-wing person or something like that. I don't know if people do have that, but you know, some of the things I say, but it's like, anything you're pushing back against political correctness, then you're going to be perceived as on the right. Do you see what I mean? It's just become a left versus right, but it's more of like a projection than it is like you're actually right. You know, because politically, what we're suggesting is everybody has everything they need, and it should be like a given. That's pretty actually left from the perspective of what people think of leftism. You know what I mean? Like it sounds like communism to a lot of people, but at the same time, people on the left, like if Trump said, "Let's pull out of Iraq," you know, which they did or whatever, right? Or to some degree, they'd be like, "Oh, everyone's going to die there," and you know, like they would be against that move. But traditionally, that would be a very left sort of idea.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like the reason why they didn't like George Bush is because he went into Iraq and all this stuff, right? He was they're anti-war, whatever. So the reason I brought it up is because when Biden says that, even if he says it I mean, do you guys remember when he was talking to Charlemagne the God on that interview back right before the George Floyd thing, like the week it happened? And he said, if you don't know if you're voting for me or Trump, you ain't black, right?
Yeah. He said, yeah, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black.
No, he said, if you don't know whether you're voting for me or Trump.
Oh.
Like literally, you know. But anyways, yeah. So he can say that and no one cares. The only people who cared were who?
The right.
People on the right, because they were like, that's not fair. He can say that and get away with it. But no one actually cared.
Yeah.
But if Trump had said that, they would have cared. So it's funny because it's more of like your political allegiance that's important. Like, for example, if Biden showed up somewhere and didn't wear a mask and was shaking people's hands, they would find a way. When I say they, I mean like the media, the people generally on that side politically, they would find a way to rationalize it and act like it's a good thing that he did it.
One of the things in that Melat was sharing with me like yesterday or 2 days ago, she was like, yeah, I never even considered based on even Asif, my upbringing. And she was also saying this was like, as we were growing up, you know, you're just told, yeah, like you just vote liberal, like just vote liberal. Right? And people have this allegiance to parties rather than we were discussing, like, she was like, wouldn't it just make more sense if there was no party name, there was no individuals. It was just like the policies were laid out and you vote for that. And then we were talking about, oh, but that's direct democracy and you require smart people for that and all that stuff. But she was just realizing that point. She's like, yeah, like, I don't know why. She was doing writings and things like that, which is cool, you know, using the tools. She was like, yeah, I realized how like the bias inside of me of like, I'm going to appeal to a group. Like I'm this or I'm that. When it's like, who cares? Like, and like, just look at the policy. What's the policy?
Yeah.
But it's like, that's not even what that's not what politics are, especially in the US. What we're seeing is like, when we watch the debate, we're like, oh my God, that would never happen in Canada. That never happened in Canada because, well, for a lot of reasons.
Like what would never happen?
The superficiality of the debate where it's not about policy. Right. And we're looking at a couple of reasons why, but simply speaking, everything is so amplified right now, times 1,000 in the US, where things have accelerated to the point where it's like, it's not even just like, let's pretend to care about the policy, but really it's like, we just want that person in. It's like, fuck the policy, fuck what they're doing. We just don't like that person. And we just want that person, right? And that point alone of wanting to defend people or wanting to defend a party within politics makes no sense. Makes zero sense.
Okay, but the thing is, I'd have to watch some Canadian political debates to see what you're saying.
Mhm.
But I don't see Canadian politics as any less emotionally influenced or biased as American politics.
It was more so in the perspective of like the it's like there's more formality and
So like the perception of how they present themselves in the debate.
like they wouldn't cut each other off. They would just be like, well, you know, Mr. Scheer said this, and the reason that's wrong is because, you know,
Excuse me, Mr. Hitler. If you don't mind, I'd like to interrupt. You know, because I don't necessarily
it's
agree with the
completely
genocide.
ridiculous what you're suggesting.
I have an objection to your proposed genocide here.
And so the point is that doesn't matter, right? At the end of the day, it's all superficial bullshit, but it's just so much more like, yeah, it's superficial and we know it. Like,
But this
I'm
is
just gonna,
why
like, it doesn't fucking
Canadians
matter.
think that they're so above Americans.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's the other point that I was bringing up. Is like, why do we all have this idea that you were talking about? I was like, man, I never realized that. We all have this idea that Americans are retarded and like it's just such a dumb country. And I was like, where did that come from? Yeah.
Maybe it's our GPA's lowering.
but seriously, it's
There
like,
are a lot of retarded people in the United States.
right. There's just a lot of people. There's a lot of people. Period. Right.
But also like, man, it's like if you have the perception that you're above other people, then you won't question the things you are doing.
Yeah.
And like in Canada, I mean, if you look at the taxes that you guys pay, if you look at the social, you know, like the medical system, all these things, you know, you're like, oh, but everybody has healthcare. It's like, yeah, but every Canadian I talk to, that I talk to personally, is like, yeah, I mean, if you really need something, you have to go to the US because like you have to fucking wait forever just for something simple or whatever. It's like they don't actually like it, you know? And the people who do like it, it's more in terms of the idea of what it represents than the actual practical application of it.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And it's like, you know, in Canada, I've been there quite a few times. It's like I could drop a fork and somebody else will apologize. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Like it's all about, I guess, just being nice and friendly. But there's nothing wrong with that. Like that's cool. I like that. I think people should be nice and friendly with each other, unless the situation warrants that you should be aggressive. And I think that's the issue: is you're not allowed to do that, right?
Hang on. No. Speaking as two people who live in Minnesota, where there's something that is called Minnesota Nice. I don't know if y'all have heard of this, if the listeners have heard of this, but it's a thing. And it's like...
Wait, hold on. Is that where you burn down buildings in your own city?
That's what it turns into.
Yes.
Okay?
It's like,
It's
you
like...
didn't say thank you. God, you're like,
That's great.
So it's like at like you're driving on the road, right? And you just like, oh, you just let them merge in, right? You're just like kind of nice, or like you always wave to everybody and all this shit, right?
Literally waved.
you see a squirrel and you like drive into incoming traffic. You're like, oh, you like cause like a green car pile.
Oh, all right, didn't kill the squirrel. Right?
Oh my god.
It is kind of like that because it's like we see the dark side of it. Minnesota Nice, it's really this Minnesota passive aggressive. And Minnesota like have no backbone and just like, oh, like we just don't talk about that stuff, like just be polite, like, you know. And it's like this classic
It's
just
true. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
it's just like
it's a
some
point
bullshit.
of avoidance
Mhm.
because
It's
they
like-
would rather not deal with the controversy, so they just avoid it completely.
Until it gets so bad that some crazy shit happens,
And
and then
you have 4 buildings on fire when you look out your window the next morning.
But it's
people
like-
wielding axes breaking in next door.
It's like the kind of thing where it's like, hi, great, nice to meet you. And then I'm like, Drake, did you see how much of an asshole that person was?
That's what it can turn into, right?
Yeah, behind closed doors, that kind of
You've
idea.
said that to me before, Asif.
Yeah, and I was talking about Mitchell. That's crazy.
That's funny. I said the first time I met you, I'm like, God, that guy's an asshole.
Yeah, what a cunt. Be like, hey, Asif, nice. Yeah, you're cool, man.
Not that you guys are being open. Let's just talk about how we actually feel about each other.
Wow.
And that's really fascinating, though. You know, like if you come to Texas, for example, or the South, generally people are very friendly. And you get the feeling that it's a genuine like friendliness. But then also people have this perception that people in the South are very dumb and slow because I guess they talk slower or something like that. And you know, it's funny because we have what does it mean to be smart? Like people have, oh, if you went to Harvard, right? Like you're smart. But those people are stupid too. You know, none of those people understand how reality works. So that's all just perception. But then of course, I live in Houston, you go into the city, you get just some of the normal like inner city stuff. And I think the more you have people where that are really concentrated, you just get more just fear of each other. You know what I mean? Because it's like you're closer together. There's less room. You're more aware of what the other person has or doesn't have, and so forth. You know, it's like, why can't you just walk out your door and be able to walk around and not have to be with other people? You know, and I mean, part of that is accepting the system as the way it is, but at the same time, like, wouldn't it be cool if everybody could have space if they wanted to? You know, have land. Like we were talking about this earlier today. Like if you could just have everybody could have 30 acres. And I don't know if that's practically possible with the amount of land that's on the earth. I think it probably is. But you'd have to look at the practicality of it and how much would practically be possible. But I think people could have quite a bit of space, and, you know, that would require a lot more effective systems. You know, that would require a lot more trust that we're going to help each other out if someone needs help or something or whatever. But I mean, if you live in the city, it's not like you can trust anybody. And it's not like you can trust that the police are going to come if something happens, or the ambulance or whatever. What were you going to say, Asif?
No, nothing.
Oh, I thought you were going to ask them. But you know what I'm saying? Like, it's weird. It's like, is it politically correct to live in the country?
No.
No.
Okay. It's more politically correct to live in the city if you think about it.
Yeah.
And yet...
And what do we mean by that? Like, I'm thinking you're talking about like, oh, like you're a country boy, like you
see, but that's a perception.
That's it.
But that's what you're talking about, right? That's why you're saying it would be
I just mean like you have land, you have a house, I don't know why I'm holding this knife. We're talking about, as soon as you start talking about the city, man, I just start to get but it's like you have your own place, and you're also educated, so you understand, like, you know, how to take care of yourself, relatively speaking. But that doesn't mean we can't also have technology. And we can't have also systems that, you know, deliver things that you need and all that kind of stuff. We can have all that too. It's just a matter of us being creative as a society. But I don't mean anything other than that. I don't mean like you have to be you don't have to dress a certain way or something. It'd be more practical. And so if you look at people in a more like country setting or rural setting, they dress in a practical way, generally speaking. There is also that develops into a sort of image and culture, which reinforces itself. But generally speaking, it's a more practical focus. It's not so much focused on appearance. It's more a focus on quality over appearance. You know what I mean? Versus in the city, everything's about how you appear. You know, and it just shows it's like that desire to be perceived a certain way, and then therefore you build like a self-image of yourself based on what you wear and what your opinions are and all these things, and that becomes like the focal point of your life. And then politically you start arguing for things that reinforce that as opposed to physical practical reality. Like people from the country, politically, they're more focused on their ability to defend themselves, their ability to provide for themselves. They don't want things to be taken from them so that other people can be taken care of, meaning they don't want to have to do things where it's like they have less so that somebody else can have something. It's not so much a focus on, well, you know, okay, versus you go into the city and it's more, I don't even know how to describe what it would be. It's everybody is in a constant state of anxiety and rushing around.
Yeah.
And so politicians learn, and the media learns how to play on people's emotions. And you're like, man, I'm so afraid of everybody. Everybody's a fucking asshole. Everybody's out to get me. So they're like, oh, we need to give, you know, everybody needs to be taken care of. We need social, we need to help the poor. And you're like, yeah, I don't have time for that. Yeah, you do it. Okay, cool. You know, and it just becomes, you don't actually think it through. You know, you look at Canada, for example, and like Justin Trudeau when he became prime minister, he was like, we're going to have the most diverse cabinet that's ever happened in Canada. And it was like, okay, I'll take a brown one, a black one, a white one, a Chinese one. I'll take what are you? You're some kind of in between. I'll take one of you. Okay, you're a woman. Okay, you got a wheelchair. Okay, you got 3 legs. Okay, great. It's like, they're just like, he's looking at it going, not too many of you. You go. Okay, let's get another one. Okay, you're different. Okay, you look good.
He's like, but one of them's like, but I have the most education and experience, and I've been running, I've been in education for 14 years as the highest possible position. No. You're white. Excuse me. You're a white male.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Or we have too many women already now, or too many men, or too many of this, whatever. It's like his focus. And I remember Jordan Peterson made a really cool video about like how he was so incompetent because he built his cabinet based around just that point. And now, if also those people were highly competent, then what does it matter? Like, I don't have a problem with it being diverse. And I think that's the issue people have is like, if you argue, oh, it's about competency, that's really just a cover because you don't like black people, you don't like brown people, you don't like Asians or whatever it is. But the reality is, if you flip it, the argument for everything should be diverse is the people's starting point is actually they just don't like this group. They don't like men. They don't like whatever it is. And the problem with that is right now where the context of society is at, the people who are the most aggressive, the most embodying of the characteristics that the people on the left say they don't like, those people are in charge of our world. And by taking the individuals who are just at the normal level of society and saying, you're a man, you can't be aggressive, and you're a woman, you need to be more aggressive, all you're doing is destabilizing the middle and the lower. The very super elite of this world don't play by those rules. They may pretend to, but they don't. They really don't. And so it's just a game that's used to destabilize everybody else so that it's easier to take over. It's like there's these rules if you want to take over society. You feminize the men, you do X, Y, and Z, and it's like all those things are being done.
Feminize the men is one of them? In what?
Absolutely. Like, let's take, for example, what's the politically correct term? Eskimos? No, it's not Eskimos.
Indigenous.
Ice people. Indigenous, yes. First Nations, natives, I don't know. It's like whatever you want to call it. Whatever I say right now, 5 years from now, people are going to be like, that was the most politically insensitive thing that anyone's ever said. You know what I mean? I could say First Nations, Indigenous, BIPOC, whatever it is. Doesn't even know what that stands for?
Yeah. Black Indigenous People of Color.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense. Black Indigenous People of Color. Why do you have to say the black if you're saying people of color? Or does color not include black?
But remember, there's some organization called the NAACP, and it says colored people in it, but colored people is like politically incorrect. So do you change the organization's name?
People of color will become politically incorrect eventually.
Yeah,
it absolutely will. So, anyways,
soon you're not gonna be. It'll be politically incorrect to call people by their names. You just have to call them, hey, Whitey, Whitey 503, hey, brown guy 1405. You call them by their postal code. And
the last 4 digits of their social here in the U.S.
Hey, white, blue-eyed, 4 eyes, 115.
You just describe them with their physical character. It's like, oh man, that is. I can conceive of that.
Just give it.
So, Kev was explaining the how you like feminize the men and you destabilize.
Oh yeah. Like, look at like the native. Was it native? Whatever it was. Indigenous, whatever you want to call it.
Right, indigenous, yeah.
Okay, indigenous. See, but indigenous doesn't make sense either.
Native makes sense. The people who are here first, native. It's a more general term.
Are you sure they were here first?
It's like saying because you were here first, you have a right to this property.
Yeah.
So
finders, keepers.
What about the white people in Europe? Like the Norwegians, would they also argue that they're the natives there and that the Muslims are like colonizing them?
Oh, sure.
They would not.
Because that what I just said is politically incorrect, yeah?
Yeah.
But if I say no, but if there are native people in the US and the white people came there and they colonized them, like, yeah, definitely. Why? Because they were there first, it's their land and so forth. Okay, what about the Norwegians or something?
But hang on, because there's more to that argument, right? It's like
Okay.
It's the
Spice
white
it up,
people are
spice it up,
going
baby.
there by choice, and they're like purposely going to colonize, whereas the refugees are not going to Norway purposely to colonize. They're just trying to find a
Home.
Yeah,
right.
but
There's
wouldn't
something there,
you
though.
be
Kind of the
able
same
to
thing
say,
as the
wouldn't you be able
pilgrims.
to
The
say,
pilgrims are trying to find like release from religious persecution. That's true.
You know what will be said though is they'll say that's just a story, that's all fake.
but then if the white people that came here to America are, you know, taking over land that was founded by somebody else, then aren't all individuals that came over to America then taking the land from the natives as well, no matter what background you're from? Whether you're Chinese or African or Indian or whatever, like from anywhere. So you're coming over
Not
here
just
no
the
matter
white
who you
people, it's
are,
like
they're
everybody.
Good
taking
argument.
land from the natives.
That's good.
But it's so obvious that it's not about consistency. It's about this inner feeling of guilt that we all have when you have money or when you have your basics met and that there's like other people who don't have it. You know, it's like when you look at the person who's homeless and you feel ashamed,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah, you wanna
and
give
then they
them
ask
money.
you for money and you're like, oh, I don't have anything, but you're obviously just lying, you know, like you couldn't just go to the ATM and help them or something. But I'm not suggesting anyone does that. I'm just saying like you feel that inner kind of sense of shame, you know. I think everybody has that to a certain degree, and it's easy to amplify that and manipulate it and then tell a story about, you know, but none of the solutions that are being offered are real solutions. You know, oh, but okay, going back to the feminization thing. Think about like Native Americans. I think it's the same thing in Canada. It's mostly like now like a female centered thing,
Yep.
but it's not a good situation for any of them.
Like matriarchal.
You know, and you could argue part of the problem is they're in the context of the other society, which is not accepting them and all this stuff. But if it was literally the best way to do it, they would do really great, you know. But it's like basically a bunch of drunk dudes sitting around doing nothing all day and a bunch of women teaching kids to like beat drums and speak in a language that is not useful anymore. I know that's politically incorrect, but that's what it is if you're just looking at it objectively, you know. And so even when we've gone into these places and said like, look, take tutor, your people, your children can become super advanced and they can not only preserve your culture but then also be in the larger culture and like be in it and do well. It's like, yeah, we'll get to that. Right. Today we have a drum circle, like where we're all learning about our tribal dances. And it's like, why is that important? And so why is your culture who you are? It's something you're programmed with. It's not who you are. And this is the weird thing about it is like, I had an argument with someone who is in our familial circle, I'll say. I don't want to call him out too hard, but
docs.
Super liberal, super like, you know, highly educated, PhD, all that stuff. And they were like, well, we were talking one time, and I don't remember how we got on the because we were talking about techno tutor, and I was talking about supporting people and so forth, and education, all this stuff. And they were like, somehow the conversation got to the point where they were like, you know, they said something about race because I said something and they were like, that's kind of racist or whatever. And it wasn't something that I even would have perceived as politically incorrect to say. It was just like they were saying it to argue what I was saying. And I was like, you know, explain this point of like, I asked them directly, I said, do you think that race is genetic? And they were like, no, it's not genetic. And I was like, what do you mean? No, it's not genetic. Clearly it's genetic. I was like, if two black people have a baby, it's going to be black, right? And they were like, not necessarily. I'm like, okay. I mean, yeah, I guess technically you could have some genes that got skipped several generations.
Yeah.
Sure, but that's still, it's in the DNA.
Genetic.
It's still
It's still
genetic. Even though it may not be totally 100% the prediction you had, there's still the genetics are influencing it. And she was like, no, it's not. And I said, well, then what is race? She says, it's cultural. It's just cultural. And I was
So
like,
Eminem
okay.
is black.
I was like, okay, this is what I said. I said, okay, so let's see. I was like, because I was trying to see, like, I was trying to test, like, how far would they take this point? And I said, if, I said, look at the NBA. Okay, it's mostly black people, right? And I said, why is that, right? And she said, because that's the culture. People put emphasis on that, right? So like those families put the emphasis on that. And as I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, I mean, I can understand that. That definitely would be an influence, yeah. Like,
yeah,
if you have an overemphasis on, you know, you can't. There's certain things that are not available to you. This is kind of your only path.
yeah.
Then that would make sense, right? But it still, I don't think would explain it, because you don't think there's a lot of white kids whose dream is to be in the NBA. Maybe it doesn't come up. Maybe it's just nothing that they're not pushed into that direction.
But you're
But look
thinking
at-
of white kids as skin color. It's more of a cultural thing. So those are actually black kids.
But it's like, but what about yeah, I don't know. It's like, why isn't it 50-50? And how come no one's arguing that it should be diverse? Like, no one's making that argument. No one's making the argument that the NBA should be a certain representation of races in our country, right? But my point was, you know, generally speaking, you have certain, there's definitely a cultural element. You have certain genetic aspects, but then there's certain things that are cultural. But the specific race that a person is, like their facial features, their skin color, and so forth, how is that cultural?
It's not.
It isn't.
Some would say
What-
that it defines the culture. It's a part of the definition of the culture.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What do you mean by that? What do you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you look at, like, say, the Native American culture, one of the aspects is like men growing their hair really long. And so like that's kind of like a thing that they have, is like long, dark hair that they can put their feathers into, or they're big. They have, I'm not sure what
The
they call them.
headdress.
The headdress.
Mhm.
Or different things like that. And so like that would be like their dark, long black hair. And so that's just like within the definition of their culture. Or within,
But if you saw a guy that has my skin complexion and my facial features, and I was wearing like native traditional clothing, what do you think the left's response to that would be?
Cultural appropriation or something like that.
But how are they making that? And I agree with you, like, obviously, right? You see that happen all the time on social media. But if I'm adopting the culture, then how does my skin color have anything to do with it?
because that's not within the culture's definition.
You have to have the right skin color?
Yeah, that's the
See,
culture.
but isn't that racist?
Yeah.
Isn't that like exclusionary based on race?
Yeah.
And but
Definitely.
what's interesting about it is when you start going into all that, I remember this one time, I don't know if we talked about this before, but that one time, remember, Drake, you were here, and I think you guys were here too. Remember when we were looking at that? What are you doing? Did y'all see that?
No,
Maybe that was a secret message for me. If you're watching the video, go back and watch Asin. Just go back like half a minute.
I was trying to let you know that I think I was there. I'm not sure though.
No, you weren't there. This was at our house.
Thinking something. Okay, yeah, the three one. Okay.
But we were talking about we were looking at that thing from the National African American,
Or yeah.
is it Heritage? I can't remember what the whole thing
Yep.
is, but some museum.
African American Museum or something.
And
And
they
they-
ended up apologizing for this apparently.
Yeah.
I want to see that. What was
Okay,
that?
You can look it up, but just don't share your screen.
I want.
Parts of it did get changed. Like they apologized formally.
No.
Basically, they were talking about what white culture is.
Uh-huh.
If you just
They
go
were
on
talking about
Twitter,
white culture, but they didn't define in any way that was about white skin color.
Hmm.
It was all just cultural. It was things
No,
like
wait. They did say something about white skin
What?
color. Female attractiveness is based on blonde hair, blue eyes, like a Barbie doll.
okay.
Yeah, but that's not the
But-
skin.
But then they said like male attractiveness was based on like hardworking and
That is a
Plus,
texture.
intelligence and something else.
How can I say
Oh,
this when I'm not without appearing racist?
Fuck it.
Just take those points and reverse them.
Uh-huh.
And you're just saying, okay, black people, according to what people think of as their stereotypes. Like, what is it okay, but I mean, I don't actually know. I'm just saying what the stereotype would be. What is it that you would assume based on culture, observing culture, black women would look for in a man, or what they would value in their like man or whatever?
Oh goodness.
Does he make money? And
Yeah.
is he strong?
Yeah.
I think that's for everybody.
And probably one more thing, but you don't have to say it if it's not.
Fucks hard.
What are you getting
Yes.
at?
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, true.
Right? But what I'm saying is, like,
It could be a lot of things.
It's not intelligence.
It also depends on the generation of woman you're looking at. If she's a younger woman, it may be like, is he a music artist and he actually does well with his music? Is he does he partake in different substances that I partake in? Is he
Just about the power.
People
But is intelligence one of them?
Not
Like, you're more
necessarily.
immersed in that culture.
Absolutely.
What would you say?
So I know as a kid, I got teased all the time for reading or being intelligent, any of that stuff. It was something that
Was it in relation to your skin color?
yeah, for sure, 100%. Is more something that like I tried to hide than.
See, so isn't that kind of like, if you grew up in that environment, then wouldn't you be more likely to distance yourself from that culture if you were like, yeah, but I'm really intelligent and I like science and I like
Oh yeah,
100%.
Like,
Yeah, so the whole thing was like, okay, Mailat's black, by the way. And the whole thing with certain people she knows would be like, she feels like an imposter because she's not adhering to what, you know, black people are supposed to be like, or supposed to sound like, or supposed to act like, or supposed to have these opinions or beliefs or views or intelligence level, or the you know, the way they speak, or whatever the case may be. And that's the whole thing. It's like, we don't want to go deeper into that point of, oh, black is actually a culture. It's not a culture. Like, that's not what makes you black. And that's where everything's getting mixed up.
It's like, it is a culture, even though
From the
it's
way
like, okay, literally being black means you have black skin, yeah, or like dark skin, brown skin.
That's it.
Okay.
That's it.
But
the
it's
problem
become
is it's mixed up.
it's become defined as a culture.
Exactly.
And so if you have black skin, you're expected to be in this culture.
Exactly.
But why wouldn't that culture cultivate a love or like, it's attractive to be intelligent? Why wouldn't they want people to be?
Well, because what does that mean for the ones
like,
what does that mean for the ones that aren't intelligent? All of this comes back to not changing. That's the most fundamental thing.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's a genuine question that you have, Jess, right? Like, why?
Yeah.
You're asking from like the starting point of like, well, why wouldn't you want people to be intelligent?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Because if you literally tell people that it's racist for you to value your intellectual abilities, like your ability to process information, it's racist for you to do that. Nobody's going to do that. And then as a whole, that community is not going to be as intelligent because they view it as, oh, it's
Right.
racist for you to want to be intelligent. So I'm just not even going to talk about it or pursue it. And that's culturally acceptable for me to not pursue those things. And then they wonder, why is there a gap in education through the Black community and the white community? Well, it's viewed as racist to be intelligent.
But that's what I'm saying,
Right.
is like my legitimate answer to that is the same reason why if you surround yourself with a group of friends and you start becoming successful in any regard, they're like, dude, like, just chill. Like, why you always like want to talk about like important stuff? Like, just chill for a second. It's like coming from the starting point of, dude, you're challenging me. Like, you're challenging, like, I went to school with you, so I should have the same results that you do in life, but I don't.
You're not allowed to go outside of that.
Exactly. It's like you're trying to challenge me to change. So the starting, like there was an amazing article that that was shared from somebody. There was a teacher in the inner city schools, and it was basically called like, I'm done pretending I'm the problem. And basically they're deciding to quit teaching because they kept taking on the guilt and the blame for why these kids, mainly black kids in inner city schools, were not successful. But he was saying, it's not fucking me. It's like when a kid got the opportunity to go to, I think, Harvard, the guidance counselor was like, don't do that. You're betraying your culture. But it's like, it's not because, like, my legitimate answer is because it's like challenging something subconsciously in them. They're not like, no, I don't want to change, so you shouldn't change. They're just saying like, okay, well, subconsciously, it's like, if that person excels, then I should be able to do that too. But right now I have the excuse of, well, I'm this, therefore I can't. But if that's not the reason you can't, then that creates too much cognitive dissonance.
So they keep it in the community as an excuse so that they can justify themselves not actually pursuing.
And that's within all of us, whether it's culturally, whether
it's like a small town, you know, like,
yeah, exactly.
I'm guessing most of your friends from high school have the same view of, like, growing up in a small town.
Yeah, you see this in every race, culture, everything.
Right.
Any group of any kind. Yeah. Like just even like a soccer team. It's like that one person is like staying after like practice to like keep training. They're like, dude, just like go home, like relax, man. Make sure you take your rest and all that stuff.
Yeah. Versus like, if you're like on the best team, they would all be expected to do that.
Exactly.
Like that,
because they're like, oh, if you start doing that and the coach sees it, then we're all going to have to work harder. The coach is going to be like, hey, we should all be doing this. And then you're going to make me have to work harder. It's like
but there's also the element of, it's not even a conscious thing because I don't know that I can change. So it's not it's not even like you're going to make me look bad and it's more like
that's true.
It's like a unconscious, you can't change because I can't change. And so the moment you change, it's like, it starts to like, you have to have a program that's always trying to keep everything the same. So you never have to go outside of that. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I mean, I see that in all of our culture right now. And it may seem like we're picking on just like the black point of things or like the left side of things. It's happening on all those sides. Mm-hmm. It's happening in general. Like you have the people on the right who are like, capitalism is, everyone has an opportunity. And if you don't have an opportunity, like you should
just because you're lazy.
And it's like, no, let's look at the environment. Okay. The environment that, let's say, the average black person grows up in. If you look at it statistically, they don't have a lot of books in their home statistically, right? They grow up without a lot of books in their home. They're probably not being read to. Like there's a whole bunch of points you can look at statistically, right? So they're not going to have the same opportunity for education. And if you combine that with the fact that you have people on the same on the side of, it's like, you shouldn't point out the fact that these kids can't read, because that's your cultural definition that reading is a really important thing, and that's not their culture. You see what I'm saying? And that is an actual argument that's being made. Yeah. A very real argument that's being made. It's like if you say, oh, well, for example, if you're like men and women, families, children, you should have a man and a woman married, raising the family together. That's the best way to do it. And you're like, but you're excluding all these other people who are gay or trans or whatever. And you're telling them that they shouldn't even exist. I'm not saying they shouldn't exist. Right. But why should we then say no one should be allowed? I mean, that's technically what's being said. No one should be allowed to be a heterosexual couple together in the home raising children. Because isn't that like, if you look at the actual what's going on in the media and everything, there is an attack on white culture. And what's interesting is the way it's been set up is if I say that, then people say I'm a white supremacist. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? Because I'm defending what?
White culture.
Right. But what we're trying to say here is it's not about your skin color, is it?
Right.
It's not actually about your skin color. I don't, and it's like, oh, you just want everybody to be white. What does that even mean then? What does that mean if I'm saying I just want all black people and Asian people and everybody just be white? Okay, well, let's look at what the definition of white culture is. Being on time to meetings.
Oh yeah, that's racist.
Yeah, I do think that you should be on time. I mean, not because it's respect. You should just be. It's like, then I don't have to wait. Like I schedule my time very specifically. So if you show up 15 minutes in, I don't have something to do specifically for that hour. So I don't know if you're coming on time. I can't stay an extra 15 minutes. I got something else I'm doing. Oh, well, having a set schedule, that's just white culture. You're just saying that because you're a white. And it's like, that's how practical reality functions.
Yep.
Like, why would you? It's like, if you really think about it, what's going on, it's a bunch of elitists saying, guys, being on time, respecting or being polite, reading, putting value on certain things like that, that's white culture. Black culture is just doing whatever you want all the time, and like, you know, you don't need to have a father in the home. I mean, that's just white culture, all this stuff. It's like, you're literally saying, you're defining Black culture as mostly a lot of destructive things.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're saying it's the white people or the white culture or whatever that's a systemic problem that's keeping these people down. And it's like, okay, let's just get rid of all the white people, everybody who's not a part of that culture. Okay, now how does society function?
It doesn't.
Like, and again, it's not about if there was only Black people, how would it function? I'm not saying that if only there was Black people in the world, that would be a problem. What I'm saying is, if you look at it from what's being defined as the culture itself, how would society function? Because literally they're saying men shouldn't have any say in anything. Okay, so what do men do all day? They just sit around and wait for a woman to give them orders? Or everybody should just like be on a quest their entire life to like figure out what their gender is? Things that are irrelevant. Things that clearly stem from a problem. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're trying to figure out what your gender is, see, but again,
yeah.
Again, the argument will be that, well, we have a society that doesn't include everybody. And it's like, no, we have a society that doesn't take care of everyone's actual real physical basic needs. And then we have all these psychological problems that stem from it as like second, third, fourth order consequences. And then those things start to mix together and create more consequences. And then no one feels comfortable because at some level, we're all like, just kind of like, gotta like defend myself all the time. You know what I mean? That's how we're all kind of feeling, even at an unconscious level. And then some people get like the brunt of all of that. It's like, it just kind of compounds into that person where they're just always anxious. You know what I mean? And they're saying, well, and the thing is, I'm not blaming that person for saying that society needs to adjust to accommodate them. I'm not blaming that person. The people who really deserve the blame from that perspective is the ones who are not actually being affected in that way, but are trying to change the political system and so forth to do things that are going to make it that consequence on everybody. That sounds like, meaning if you're like, look, Black culture is, you don't need to have a father in the home. You know, you could just have a woman who just is a stripper. That's fine. She can be a mom and a stripper. Why are you degrading sex workers? That's a legitimate means of making money. You know, this is a real argument. I mean, when I took the kids to a park the other day, which I won't go back to again, and there was this woman on the bench, a young Black woman, and she was like on the phone the whole time. And I only know because when I walked over there, like I could hear what she was saying because the kids were playing. And she was like, yeah, bitch. I mean, I was like stripping, and what does it matter if I flash my pussy around and like, you know, like I get some dollars, you know, and I'm gonna do what I got to do. And like, that's how she was talking, and like what she was talking about, and like her kids running around. And I mean, she was literally just having this whole conversation justifying, and then like all the other bitches at the strip club and how, you know, they don't have real life experience. And she was just like gossiping with her friend on the phone about all the other strippers. And I'm like, holy fuck, man. Like, and you watch her kid, and her kid's running around like this, you know, like, and you see these kids when they get to the playground and they just turn into little monsters. Like they're immediately like, rah! And they start like running around screaming, and like, not like kids having fun, like wee, that kind of stuff. Like they turn into monsters. It's
I've
weird.
seen that.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And it's like, when I take my kids there, Max is just like, and he'll like go up to these kids and he'll be like, hi, what are you doing here? You know, like he'll start to try to talk to them, and they'll just look at him and like just like start running around. You know, like, what are you talking about? And like even the 8-year-old kids can't communicate with him. You know, and so it's like, okay, so
and I think what the point that you're making is like, it's one thing doing that, but then the second part of it is like, and if you're not supporting, if you're not a stripper, then you're racist. Like if you're not supporting that idea that there shouldn't be a father in the home, there should, like, if you're not supporting that quote unquote Black culture that we're enforcing,
right,
then you're a problem.
Right.
Like, it's not you do your own thing and we're going to support it. It's like, no. You don't do your own thing. You're evil if you do your own thing. And I think that's what the point that you're kind of mentioning.
Well, and when I'm saying like this woman's a stripper, right? I'm not judging her. I understand why she's doing it. Fundamentally, it's no different than being a truck driver, is it? Just doing a job from that perspective. I get that. However, imagine you're a mother and you have to do this thing for work because of your education. It's the thing that you can do. Okay. And if men were sexually satisfied, there wouldn't even be strippers, would there? No, probably not. Maybe there still would be, and I don't know, women would just do it because they love expressing themselves. I don't know. But why is it that being a stripper is empowering, but also it's sexist to objectify women? It's like it doesn't make sense logically. It's not logically consistent. But imagine you're a mother and you're with your baby, you're with your daughter, your son or whatever, and you're trying to care for them. And then you got to go and strip for a bunch of men for dollars. Like, how do you take both of those roles and do the mothering part effectively?
That's not gonna happen.
You know, and is there any way you're ever going to make enough money to like just have the life that you want? I mean, isn't that what Cardi B represents? It's like, oh look, she was a stripper and she made it. It's kind of like Jay-Z. He was a drug dealer and he made it, you know? So it's kind of like that lifestyle. It's kind of like winning the lottery. I could win.
To me.
No one ever wins the lottery except a few people, but it's a possibility. You know, it's like hitting the jackpot or something. And so it's like glorifying something that is not good. And in fact, the only thing that if you look at Jay-Z or anybody, it's like they got out of it. You know, but a lot of people, they never get out of it. They just stay within that. So you look at all these
story is they watched, like, you know, the rap stories, the story of rappers who got out of the game eventually and who are successful now. It's like they watched their friends go to jail or die. And then they were like, oh fuck, like this is my wake up call. This is my way up.
You know, it's like what I'm seeing here is just there's this argument for culture. And then on the other side, it's like you have this other culture, which is the dominant culture, which is really bad, which is just oppressing all these people. But is it that these particular people, let's say the white people, are inherently evil and they just hate black people? Or is it that they just want everybody to adopt their culture? You see what I'm saying? And if it's they want everybody to adopt their culture, huh?
Why does it have to be or?
What was the two things?
Well, what I'm asking, like, is it one or the other?
Oh, well, I want every individual to live to their full potential, which means being intelligent. And if by their definition that's a white culture thing, then sure.
Right. But what I'm saying is it's not about a person's skin color. It's not about their genetics and so forth. It's about them having a good education and so forth. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is cultural. Yeah.
So the other thing I want to bring up is the thing that I've noticed with complete certainty. It's like they've identified this new term, which I think is more accurate, is anti-black racism. They're not talking about racism. They're talking about anti-black racism for some reason. But have you guys seen, like, I don't know, more than one tweet? I personally haven't seen one Facebook post, one tweet or anything that's promoting equality. Like, nobody's in favor of equality anymore.
Mm.
Dude,
think about
That's
it.
interesting.
That's a crazy like,
right?
Because I was reading 1984, and in 1984 they talk about how in the past, you know, people would strive for equality, you know, talking about communism and all those kinds of things, right? But then at a certain point, the farce was kind of dropped and nobody strove for equality anymore.
Oh shit.
Yet still like pushing forth like communism essentially, but without the equality aspect to it.
Yeah.
So you see how if you were promoting equality, none of this would work. Because no one's actually advocating for equality.
Because it doesn't make sense. It's not logical, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. But I'm
You're
saying,
not actually saying
all of the quote unquote solutions are not about equalizing things. What is it?
right.
I see that, but okay, have you seen, it's like a picture, it's not a meme, but it's a picture where it's like they have half of it says equality and the other half says equity. And on the equality, there's like a really tall guy and then a medium size and then a little kid. And they're like looking over a wall, right? And then the really tall guy can see, the middle one can't, the smallest one can't. Equity is then they have like bricks or like books or something. And so like the tallest guy gets like 1 book, middle guy gets like 5, and the little baby gets like 15, you know, so they can all see over the wall. That I've seen that because I've heard some people try and explain to me, oh, we don't necessarily want equality. What we want is equity. And I still have yet to really understand.
But think about the word equity. What does it mean when you have equity in your home?
It's like part ownership.
It's like you own something, right?
Yeah.
So isn't that just they want property?
Yeah. Ownership of something that
like, okay, like
money.
What is it that the people are arguing that they want, that they don't have, that is the issue?
As in the common denominator between equality and equity, they're the same fucking thing. It's to be fair, to be equal, like to have fairness, right? But if somebody's saying, no, we don't want equality, but we only want equity, then that's a little weird because the only differentiator is ownership.
But isn't that like saying, I'm the short guy. I don't have what you have. I need more. So what is it that, again, it's like, it's not just about Black people, because if it were, then they would just only be talking about that. Of course, that's the Black Lives Matter. Everyone's pushing that, but it's more than that, because it's the indigenous, it's the gays, it's the lesbians. It's like all these points, right? What is it that they don't have?
Emotional stability.
Yeah, but no one has that.
Yeah, I know, but that's why it's a never solvable problem. If you keep focusing on that, it's not going to solve anything. It's not that the women don't have money, for example, or the indigenous people like don't have a home and things like that. It's between the education and finance point, because that's why it literally only comes down to money, because they're saying the Black people with money are white supremacists.
Unless they talk shit about Trump.
Exactly.
So but like LeBron James, for example, no one says he's a white supremacist.
Right.
But he just bought a multi-million-dollar home or I don't know if he just bought it, but he has like a multi-million-dollar home in a part in California where it's like 95% white. So it's like, but why didn't you move to a predominantly Black neighborhood? And I'm not saying he should or shouldn't. I'm just saying,
if you're gonna play that game,
yeah,
then why didn't you just do that? And so, go ahead.
Well, it's just, when I look at this whole thing, you can't win in those arguments. There is no winning there, because I think what is being claimed as what somebody wants and everything, no one knows what they want. They don't actually know what they need.
And so
they're
Mitch,
being played by someone else who is trying to control things for their benefit, where none of the people who are out there fighting win ever.
Yeah.
They're like the soldiers. They don't get to win the war because they're going to die on the battlefield. Doesn't matter if their country wins.
Or their closest friends are going to die, or they're traumatized for the rest of their life. Like,
right.
It's a lose-lose-lose situation.
You're assuming that, you're doing it for the greater good or something. You're just sacrificing yourself. But actually what it is if you think about it, it's like, we don't want equality. In fact, we don't want police protection. We don't think people should be able to own property. It's what's being said, right? Property ownership is evil because it's capitalist, right? Now, of course, if I sit here and argue, no, leave things as is, well, that keeps things as is. But if you argue for abolish property, do you think Bill Gates is going to give up his property?
No.
In fact, Bill Gates is very intelligent and very clever and has lawyers. He will give up his property because he will put it in a trust or a corporation or something like that, or a nonprofit, but he'll still have it. He'll still have a mansion and you won't. And that's the problem I see, is like the things that people are arguing for is they don't realize what it's really implying. You see what I mean?
So, Mitch, with that picture that you were talking about, it's like, it's a stupid analogy. Like the analogy is so limited, but what does it do? You see a child, like in the picture, right? As you described it, and then you see what you described, and then you're like, okay, yeah. There's something that I'm not seeing here. Like, okay, it is about equity and not equality. Like, how did I not see that before? But it's all just bullshit.
There's another image too of it's like this black female and this white male, and they're like on a track and they're running toward a finish line, and the black female, there's like spikes and like barbed wire and stuff that she's got to like apparently jump over, and then the white guy, there's like one little hurdle, and then the tagline underneath was like, it's the same distance or something, and so it's like this. I think there's like a sense of want from Black people that I've talked to. There's this sense of wanting some sort of acknowledgement that slavery happened and a bunch of shitty laws had been passed, like Jim Crow and all that, where in the past Black people had been systematically oppressed. So I think there's some sort of like acknowledgement point that wants to be had, but then beyond that, there's no real like, okay, what does it actually look like for us to get to a point of equal society? Because I think people can't even fathom.
But look at the slavery thing, though. Okay, this is the issue I see with that. There were lots of slaves historically. All kinds of people were slaves. Black, white, brown, Asian, everybody. Everybody was slaves at some point. Every race enslaved every other race.
Every race enslaved their own race.
Every race enslaved their own race. It's like everybody. Greeks had slaves and stuff that were also Greeks. Like it was all, everyone was doing slavery. That was just. But what is slavery? It's like we have this image and it equals a black guy getting whipped by like a white guy. That's brainwashing. Like we've been brainwashed to have that image, and it doesn't justify any kind of slavery. But the problem is we're arguing for recognition of slavery as a past evil when it's happening right now. Like we're all still enslaved to the system. Imagine there's a system. It's like a machine, like an artificial intelligence, and it's enslaved all of us. It's like in the Matrix. And we're all fighting with each other about who it's slave to. And this machine is like just watching us like, you're all my slaves.
And it's actually like taking from that. It's like, yeah, keep fighting. This is perfect.
Yeah, keep fighting. Yeah. Because how do you know that? It's like Scott Adams did that video on artificial intelligence and how it's already enslaved us because we're fighting on social media about left and right and all this stuff. And it's just keeping us, and it's keeping us divided and polarized and so forth. And the thing is, even on the left or right, you can't have any unity because there's not an equal vocabulary. You see what I mean? There's not an equal understanding of how reality works. So on the right, you have people arguing for religion and Christianity and capitalism and all this stuff. On the left, you have people arguing for women's rights and reproductive rights, and you have reparations and just all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, if everybody was able to read effectively and process information effectively, how could anyone take advantage of each other? And then even if you had a fully capitalist system, why would anybody be left behind? Because the only way you could be left behind or oppressed is if you're not competitive. You know what I mean? And that's what doesn't really make sense, is arguing that the quote black culture is all of these things that's not the quote white culture. You're just telling people to remain uncompetitive in this system. That's all you're doing. And I'm not arguing for competition, but that is the system we have. So they're using that to say, well, we should get rid of the system. But then you've just said we don't value hard work. We don't value being on time to things. You don't value having a mother and a father in the home to be stable for the children. You don't value literacy. It's like all the things that they know can't easily be fixed, and also just so happen to be things that will destabilize society. So that people under that banner, all they can do is go and be angry and fight.
So the real thing to realize within this is what I see come together. And Mitch, I'm going to come back to that point that you're mentioning. But the real point that people have failed to clearly acknowledge is anytime we're actually talking about black people, and what Cameron's talking about is like, Cameron doesn't think all black people are always late. He's talking about how it's just about Black culture. And
Well,
Black culture.
I'm not even saying, just real quick, I'm not even saying that that's Black culture is to be laid.
Mhm,
I'm
mhm.
saying that's what is being promoted as the definition of it.
Right.
Like there are very many Black people who are highly effective in business and so forth, and they understand you have to be on time to things. Like it's not even a thing. The only people who don't value being on time is people who just don't give a fuck, and like they don't have anywhere to be. They're not trying to create something, so you just go in from thing to thing. You see what I'm saying though? It's like that's what we're being told now through the media is Black culture. And so things that would actually empower you, even in the system that we have, are being promoted as evil, bad. Don't do those things.
And so the real point is like what they're talking about as Black culture are these bad things that we should all recognize is good. Why should we recognize it's good? Is because it's associated with this group of human beings. And if you don't recognize that's good, that means you're oppressing these group of human beings. Like that's not the problem. The problem is, say, for example, because of slavery, it created consequences where there's groups of people who are less educated, who don't have access to as much opportunity. Back then, they had to start at a lower position, so it's harder. Say, for example,
that's not even true.
I know, but for example, okay, because I want to touch on Mitchell's point of what he was saying of like, you know, they want acknowledgement of guys. There's been, you know, this many 100 years of oppression. Like, come on, right? It doesn't matter if you acknowledge it. Like, if everybody was like, holy fuck, like everybody was like, holy shit, like we're fucking sorry, man. Like, that's crazy that I did that to you. Or sorry, my great somebody did it to your great somebody. Whatever, right? It's like, do you think that's gonna solve anything? Nobody fucking cares. The only thing they actually care about is I don't understand what's going on inside of me, and it makes me really fucking angry. Or all these people are hurting because lack of education. And when we say education, we mean your ability to earn money and your ability to sort through your states, your emotional states. Okay. Well, that's what I mean right now. And in terms of what we're actually arguing for is not for us to actually, not us, but I mean, what society is arguing for is not for, hey, we should find a way to educate everybody. We should find a way to provide for everybody. We're just like, no, fuck that. How about let's acknowledge that there are broke, sad, hurting people in this world and promote that as a good thing, which is totally fucking backwards, right? Because I have seen that argument a lot of like, yeah, like we want acknowledgement that, you know, Black people were enslaved and it was fucked up. Okay, say that was it. Like 99.9% of slaves were Black people, right? Let's just pretend, okay? Because nobody actually fucking knows the truth. That's why it's the past. Like you can't recall it. You're recalling it through indirect mediums, right? What's the solution? Like, wouldn't it make sense that if you did something today that, you know, in your house, you like broke a wall and your spouse or brother, sister, mom, dad came and was like, you broke the wall. And you were like, no, I didn't. And they're like, acknowledge you broke the fucking wall. And then you said, okay, I broke the wall. Would the person bringing that up, would they just be like, okay, great. That's all I wanted to understand. All right. See you guys later. It's like, no, they want to be like, okay, great. Take responsibility for it now and fix the wall. But what's happening is that if you say, yeah, let's fix the wall, they're saying, no. In other words, if you're saying, yeah, we should fix these things, we should educate everybody, we should get everybody up to the highest standard possible, they're saying, no. Don't try to fix the wall. Just feel fucking bad about it. And I'm going to keep being angry. Like there's no actual solution is what I'm saying.
Just acknowledge its damage so we can continue to be a victim.
There's no end goal. It doesn't make any sense. It's like we're going to abolish the police so that we erase the memories of slavery. Like you can't. It's going to be a collective agreement that we solve the consequences of this idea that, you know, slavery created all these consequences only for Black people. But fuck it, man. Like all the Blacks, all the whites, everybody who are suffering from the consequences of what they're actually suffering the consequences of is not racism. It is classism. It is money. It is the fundamental point of everything is run by money. That's why I don't care if I'm enslaved. If I'm white I'm enslaving white, black, brown, anybody who wants to be fucking enslaved, come on over. Like if you're like, I want to be your slave, I'll be like, no, you're white. No, I'll take you 100%. It's no problem. That's why black people were enslaving black people, because it wasn't about skin color. They're just looking for, hey, who can I control? And black was the indicator of, okay, they don't know the lay of the land. Like they don't speak the language, whatever the case. So they're not going to have the education levels to equalize themselves to me.
Yeah.
Right. And the people who did, they did, right? They did the indentured servitude, and then they rose up. And
What culture, not skin color per se, but what culture presents them the biggest challenge to the elite right now? To the elite having total, complete control over every decision you make.
I don't know. What do you think?
Presents the biggest what?
Challenge to the elite having total, complete control over every single decision everybody makes.
You think it's black or white culture?
I would say
No, it's white culture.
White culture, yeah.
What were you going to say, Drake?
I was going to say black and white culture. Because
I
black
see
people
like
don't like being told what to do. And white people, they think they are the fucking boss. They think but I mean that's the culture, you know.
The only ones that would practically bring themselves up to a position where they challenge the elite or take power away from the elite would be white culture. We're talking about culture.
Meaning not the white people, but like if everybody adopted white culture.
There would because you have to be educated.
But that's what I'm saying. That would be part of it.
Culture. Yeah.
That would be part of it.
Yeah.
So
there would be no.
If everybody adopted black culture,
there would be huge problems.
Why do you think every fucking corporation on the planet right now is pushing everybody to accept black culture and white culture is bad? Because again, taking the skin color part out of the equation, we're just talking about culture because it's not genetic. Like the argument's already out there that skin color is not the point. It's only ever used when it benefits that argument. You know what I mean? That's like, oh, you don't understand because you're white. It's like, how do you know I'm white?
Yeah.
You know, well,
what
because
if my parents are black and I just was the skip gene?
Right, exactly. So, but it's not logically inconsistent because that's not the point of it.
Yeah.
What I'm seeing is there's a concerted effort here to destabilize society and remove all forms of competition. And that's why they're going after the cultures. Mm-hmm. It's like take all of the lower IQ population culture countries and take those people and put them into the populations where there is some level of being able to have some sovereignty in that country in terms of the world system, and then destroy all of that. That doesn't in any way devalue or dehumanize any human being on this planet, regardless of what their skin color or culture is from, because culture is programmed. Just because you're born in a country where the environment is a certain way, that you have a low education and so forth. The problem is people on the left would feel like you're dehumanizing them. You're making them less than. I'm like, no, I'm not. You're equal to your culture. Ooh. That's it. There is no one. That's not one person is better than another person. You're just equal to your culture. It's like two computers. They're equal to what they're programmed to do.
Like it's so obvious that it's literally, you know, we've talked about this before about how the word cult is in culture, but it's just trying to get everybody to accept like a certain way of life, a certain.
Right? Everybody, like but we should have everybody accept a certain way of life.
Right. But
you know
this
what I mean?
is like a not good one. Like
right. Yeah.
It's
getting everybody to be equal to a culture that's not best.
And so,
and that's the thing. The other thing too, just so everyone's clear, I am not arguing that white culture is best for all, meaning every element of it. Right.
Like everybody, like make sure you can't dance well. Like
right, exactly. It's like, but that's an aspect of okay, like self-expression and so forth, right? There's not. So there's plus also like I mean, this might sound like I'm being flippant about it. I'm really not. Like I really like Indian food.
Yeah.
I also like, you know what I really do. Like if whenever it's like I get to choose what we're eating that night, it's either Thai or Indian. Usually it's just curry anyways, even if it's Thai food. And I'm not trying to belittle anything. I'm just saying like I'm okay with there being diversity and differences and all this stuff. And so when I'm defining as the white culture is simply the elements that are like sovereignty of the individual, self-responsibility, all those things. And somebody might look at that and go, oh, wow, you're really a white supremacist. You just think white people are all amazing. And it's like, no,
I want that
that
for
is what
everybody.
is being defined as white culture by other people who are saying, who are the anti-white supremacists. They're saying
Right.
that. So the only reason I'm using those words at all is because that's the game that's being played. I don't think we should have to say those words and use it in that context and say this is white, this is black, because the problem with doing that is you have to make black seem bad and white seem good. But that's not reality. There is no black is good and white is bad and vice versa. That's not how reality works. Like when you turn off the lights, it's dark outside, right? You can't see much. Is that
Man,
bad?
you
No.
know what's funny, because I was reflecting on that point of like how it's all programming of like white is good and black is bad. I'm like, wait, but that would make sense culturally speaking, that we would have this inherent, like human beings have a bias towards black people being bad. But then, like again, reflecting on it, I was like, that's not true. That's something that's being pushed on us, right? And it's like,
Dude, most people think black people are cool.
exactly. And
Like, give me a fucking break. If we're being realistic about what is our actual culture, that is what most people think. Like, suddenly it's like we just became super racist and hate all black people and anybody. It's like, what are you talking about? Now, if we're talking about, yes, but black people have been disadvantaged, they don't have proper education, so forth. Yeah, okay. I mean, that's the points we should address.
that's literally our
pretend like, right. That's what I'm saying. But let's not pretend like everybody just, you know, like I saw somebody said, they said the black woman is the most disrespected person on the planet. But who did Joe Biden interview when we did an interview with a black woman?
Who?
What?
Joe Biden. Cardi B.
Yeah, he did with Cardi B.
That's right.
Why? Why did he choose her? Why?
Wait, really?
Anyone give me a real legitimate reason?
Because she has influence among the younger people.
That's who apparently, I mean, I don't even think it's just black people, but that's like the example of the black woman, right? I'm not even saying black people like agree with this. When I'm talking about it, I'm talking about the media, the media culture, not what actual real individual people think. There are a lot of real individual people who just go along with the media culture. So it is also what a lot of people think, but it's not what everyone thinks, right? But what I'm saying is that's being held up as like some kind of role model for people or something.
Wow, I didn't even know that happened. That's crazy. I'm looking it up now. That's crazy. And that's,
you should watch the Candace Owens breakdown on that. It's hilarious.
There's
There's even a part where Joe, I think this really happened, where Joe Biden said something and Cardi B was like, it's like, holy shit. You know, it's insane.
Cameron, I think you did that better than her. You should do it again.
what was I saying before? Oh yeah, about being programmed that like dark and black is bad and all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
I remember I think you posted the social engineering 2-hour like documentary at the very beginning. They're talking about how babies, they're not afraid of the dark. It's like you have to program them to be afraid of the dark.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I saw the point with Max when he started to be more resistant to it being dark.
Going into the dark room, yeah.
And he doesn't watch TV and stuff like that. Right. And there's a lot of factors that go into that, and we've been supporting him through that point. But it's like, you see, it's not a natural thing at all. It's definitely a thing that comes in through like environmental influences and so forth.
And so it's like, and when I was making the joke about, you know, like how Cameron was like, I don't think white culture is best for all. It's like, yeah, so everybody, like, you don't want everybody to learn to not dance. But it's really like, when you're talking about that point of self-expression, it's like a lot of my white friends like don't feel comfortable dancing if there's ethnic, exotic, you know, or black people around, because they feel intimidated. They feel like I'm inferior compared to these.
Right.
People. So at the end of the day, I think, and it's fucking crazy that point that I was talking about of no one's promoting equality. It's about being anti-racist. And here's your everybody take this definition of racism, read it, and now be against it, right? It's like, you have to be opposed to that. But no one's promoting equality because it wouldn't work.
No,
Everything
dude,
that we're seeing is
being anti-racist is, in terms of how it's being expressed right now, is totally self-interest.
of course.
Same
And
thing
that's
about wearing the
why.
masks and everything. Everyone's doing it out of self-interest. They're not doing it about the solution at all.
But you could just put words to it, right? It's for your safety. It's to protect other people. Remember that? Do you remember that slideshow that we were going through for kids on the Technotutor distributor call, right? That was awesome. I was like, wow.
I think that was the one you sent me, Drake.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. And you posted, I think you posted on Facebook. And it was like, you know, I wear a mask to protect
Yeah.
other
Others.
people.
Yeah.
And it's like, isn't that why, like you, this is, man, if you guys haven't looked up Ryan Long on YouTube, Ryan Long,
He's funny.
hilarious. He does like the most amazing, sarcastic or satirical comedy.
Is that the red long hair California guy?
No,
No,
that's
no,
JP.
Oh, that's that's JP.
Oh.
Oh, he's funny too. Yeah.
He's good. But he does so many things on, you know, I'm the social justice like prankster, and he's like, I'm the guy who takes people's complaints, and I'm supposed to call up the frontline people and make sure that they enforce those complaints. But sometimes I'm a little bit of a goofball, and he'll be like, hey, yeah, on the Black Lives Matter protest front lines, I heard the black people want it to be a lot more about naked women running around. Like, I think they just want naked women running around. And it'll be like the picture of like the lady like splitting. Guys, it's so fucking funny. And he's like, yeah, I think they want you to talk a little more about transgender and the rainbow spectrum. Yeah, no, I think that's what black people love.
What they're doing.
It's so good. But the point is, you look at what's going on the front line, and it's like 90% white people. I'm not there, right? I'm not seeing all the pictures, all that stuff, but it's like mostly white people. And it's them doing these things out of self-interest, breaking some shit, being able to like revolt and like feel all that energy and all that stuff under the guise of, well, no, I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it for other people. Like, I have to stick up for these other people. And it's like the same thing with the mask. It's the same thing with it's giving you that idea of I'm contributing to the whole, right? And the problem with it is that no one's actually evaluating the consequences of what they're doing. Because what are the actual consequences doing? It's like,
yeah.
they're
And
fucking
right
up
now,
business.
the only reason why it's happening right now is to try to defeat Trump.
Yeah.
How come you didn't see this level of craziness during Obama's presidency?
So it's like I'm creating this political bias, and I'm, you know, saying that you're not being sensitive to my opinion, and you're not being sensitive to my beliefs and all this stuff. And I see that as just like coping with your inability to like actually work through your emotions. Yeah, your emotions and your feelings, and like function at a very basic level. So you're in a very reactionary state. So you have these triggered words inside of you that like society or where you grew up or whatever has just like, that's all of a sudden like, if someone says this one thing, I'm gonna go off on them. Like when I posted something the other day, I apparently am racist. I'm the reason why the country's in the state that it's in, and that they lost all respect for me. They unfollowed me. That they hope that I die. I mean, just like all this stuff, and I'm like,
it's funny because she just posted a list of 13 different things that Trump has done since being in office. It's like real results Trump has got.
And wasn't it like you know, he put in the First Step Act that released like almost 3,000 black people from prison?
oh yeah,
Yeah,
yep.
it's like that's a pretty cool thing.
And so what I see is like, okay, what you're wanting is a society to continue to perpetuate the issues that caused you to be in this state, instead of us putting in systems that fundamentally support every child from an early age. So none of those things have to be an issue in the first place. And then they say, well, it's not an issue. It's just who I am. Anxiety is who I am. It's
like, so what is it that you want exactly?
So what I see happening is like finality is I'm anxious and really unstable and all that stuff. And I think the cause of it is because you're making me feel
Yeah,
self-conscious.
you're a bad person. You need to change.
So you guys change so that I can be okay with my instability and anxiety, not realizing that there's actual reasons why you have anxiety. There's actual reasons why you. So I was talking to somebody that I went to school with a long time ago, right? I met up with them a couple months ago, and they were saying, and it's not about the person. It's just an idea of, yeah, I have panic attacks. I have anxiety. I'm taking something for it. I'm like, have you ever looked into the possible solutions and things like that? He said, no, it's genetics. Think about that. Anxiety is genetics. But even from that perspective, it's like, I can make the case as to why it's genetic. Because I understand genes aren't this thing that's set in stone and you can't change it.
It's also epigenetics. You can also influence it by the environment. So,
but I know that that's not what he means, obviously, right?
but that's like saying, I have this problem. Why? Because of molecules. You're like, okay, yeah, everything is because of molecules. Like, that doesn't mean anything. Like, you can change.
That's what I mean.
It's justifying it because they feel good that they have it, because it separates them from other people, and it gives them an excuse to not have to do certain things, and it puts a spotlight on them in front of other people. It gives them a issue to always have for the rest of their life. It's like,
somebody hearing that might be like, are you fucking serious? But Bernard's audio. Depression is an attempt to control people in your environment. You guys heard that?
Good one. Oh yeah,
it's really good.
I used that, right? Because I realized my own points of depression was just me wanting things to change and me not wanting to change until I was like, I have to change, which meant I have to take more responsibility. I have to become better. I have to become more effective.
Same. Yeah,
that's all it is. Like, that's all we're really arguing is you need to become more effective in reality. Not, it's like, imagine you actually think Hitler is running the world. And you're like, Hitler, I don't like what you're doing. I wish you would stop it. It's like, what? How is that a strategy?
It's not.
Like, okay, let me ask you a question. How is it that Hitler is in power?
So can you explain, what do you mean by more effective?
That's what I'm saying. Meaning, why is it that Hitler is in power?
Hitler, as we're saying, because he knows how the system works. He has money.
No, it's because the people appointed him because they weren't intelligent or effective in the first place to understand what he was going to do when he was appointed. So they appointed him unknowingly.
Right. So then the solution is everybody needs to become educated effectively.
Okay. So you're specifically talking about education. So I see like effective human beings being you need to have nutrition. You need to be educated.
Right. That's all education.
Like, there's a few different things within like an effective human being, and I just kind of want us to lay that out so people understand where we're coming from. Because if we aren't clear on that, then people will be like, "Well, what do you define as effective? Your ability to dance?" Like,
that's part of it. But yeah, it's children having effective nutrition from the very beginning, having proper access to food and actually understanding what foods to eat. And that means that the parent is not imposing emotional biases on the child. The parent is effectively educated. And within that, it means that they've done DIP, Destiny I process. That's what we mean by education. If you've done all of DIP or you're walking through it or whatever, and you're using TechnoTutor, then you're what?
No, go ahead.
It's not the education system that we have. Think about this. Where are all of these people getting the idea that America is a racist country?
Media.
From the media.
Well,
yes,
okay.
But that's more like the
things were
like the activation of
things were put into them when they were children, and then it's being drawn upon from the media now.
Same thing with like coronavirus. It's like the media is not brainwashing us all that this thing's, like it's this really terrible thing that everyone's dying and stuff. They could only do that if we were like not understanding how a virus actually works.
But
just like climate change, you only if you think that if you don't understand how something works, then somebody can be like, "Yep, and now it's happening over here." What were you saying, Asif?
Yeah, it's just if I say virus, it's scary as fuck.
Okay,
Because-
okay.
because of what's
Where
being
did where did everybody? I mean, okay, I'm not
Biology.
talking about you, Asif, because you went to Canada. You're in Canada, right? But
Hmm.
where did everybody else learn about slavery?
Right.
Cool.
In school.
School. Who created the school system?
Industrialists.
The white supremacists.
Mhm.
So everything everybody thinks they know is from an education system. And then it's like when a person on the left, and again, I'm using that term just to mean anti-Trump or because that's how they're expressing the point. But when they share a CNN article, like, don't they realize that that person's a white supremacist? Like CNN itself is a white supremacist organization. It's a capitalist organization. It's a destroyer competition. Fuck everybody else. Like Ivy Tower, like big fancy offices.
Facebook,
You know what I mean?
Facebook, YouTube.
All of these things. It's like, do you not realize that these things that you think are on your side, they're just being manipulated? And I know people can say, well, it's the same thing on the other side too. It's not about choosing a side. It's about actually evaluating what is the context of it. Right? So that's why I'm not saying if everybody just voted for Trump and if everybody was just Republican, then everything would work out and that's all we need to do. Like, that's stupid. All I'm saying is, okay, do you want there to be like a total corporate dictatorship takeover of every aspect of our life? To like think about this. You can't even decide when you can leave your home. And most people, you would think, well, that would never happen, right? Most people would be fine with it. I mean, didn't that already happen recently?
Mm-hmm.
And people will justify it and they'll be like, oh, but it's because of this and this, and it's totally fine. It makes sense. And it's only for a short period of time. And then I just saw a thing recently from Canada, from the CBC, saying that the lockdowns and the social distancing and the masks will be necessary for at least 2 to 3 years.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Fuck.
I posted it on my
That is
Facebook.
the stupidest thing. Oh,
Even
my-
with a vaccine, they said.
You know what Trump said?
Huh.
At a recent rally in Minnesota, he said, as soon as coronavirus is over.
No, as soon as the elections are over.
Oh yeah, as soon as
coronavirus will be over.
as soon as the election is over, coronavirus will be over.
The businesses will be back open or something like that.
And now
And this-
everybody's laughing that, oh, he got coronavirus, hoo-hoo, he's gonna die, and all this stuff. And then it's like they're also going, oh, he's faking the whole thing. He doesn't really have it. But they're also lying about his vitals. He's about to die. He's like on his deathbed, but he's just faking the whole thing. He's staging photographs. It's all fake. It's like, which is it? It's totally insane. And it's like, we're not saying that there is not a virus. But what we are saying is it's like there's viruses everywhere. And you know what? Actually, Scott Adams, you guys know about Scott Adams? He just did a thing this morning. I was watching it. And he was saying like, you know, Trump getting the coronavirus, it could be like a Peter Parker situation. Like you get bit by the radioactive spider and then you get superpowers. And I was like, he's literally saying that Trump's going to be upgraded by COVID. And his upgrade, he was saying, was he would be more empathetic. Or at least he would know how to seem more empathetic.
Wow. That actually makes sense.
Even
That's
if it's just the
crazy.
perception people had that because he
Yeah.
had it, he understands now.
That makes a lot
Wow.
of sense.
And he like comes up with a plan of how he's gonna like combat it, and people are like sold on it and all that stuff. That'd be crazy, man.
It's like, I understand, like, but think about this too. He like took the risk. He was like, I have a job to do. I'm going to go out there. I'm not going to wear the mask all the time. It's going to make it too hard to do my job. I'm going to take the risk. People are like, oh, he's just spreading it around. It's like, no, you're wearing a mask. You're fine.
They work, right? Like they work, right?
Well, if one person goes around
Couldn't get it.
spitting on everything, it's like
Ooh, those kids.
half the people that are wearing the mask aren't even wearing them anyways. And what I don't understand was when they wear them in the car.
Oh, that scares me because like oxygen deprived.
They're literally depriving their brain of oxygen while driving a motor vehicle on the freeway.
Mm-hmm.
Think about
What?
this. The less oxygen you take in, the less what comes out.
Carbon dioxide.
CO2. It's about global warming.
There you go. Solve climate change.
You don't need a carbon tax. The mask, purchasing
No.
a mask, that's your carbon tax.
That's what I've been saying. It is the carbon tax. It's taxing your breathing. Taxing is when you make something more difficult.
That's so true.
By the way, I looked up, Mitch, your that thing you're talking about, because I'd seen that before, that equality equity thing.
I saw that. Yeah.
And I was, when you were talking about it, I remembered it, and I was like, yeah, it doesn't make sense, because I remember in the cartoon they're like looking at something, like they're looking at something, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, it's still, and I remembered when I first saw it, because I was like, whatever it is they're looking at, they're still behind the fence, so it doesn't actually make sense. You know what I mean? And so when I was looking up the cartoon to look at it again while we were talking, I see this one, and once somebody says the problem with that equity versus equality graphic, right? And I just sent it to you guys in the chat window.
Yeah.
It's got the equality one, and they're watching a baseball game over a fence. That's what it is. And like the one guy can see, they had the same height box. The one guy can see just fine because he's tall. There's the girl who can barely see over, and then there's the kid who can't see at all. Equity is when you give them each, it's like you took a box from the tall guy. Okay.
And he can still see.
The little girl still can see the same as she could before, but the tiny kid gets the guy's box, and now she can see over the top, right? That's equity. Equality is they all have the same size box. It's not what equality means, but that's what they're trying to say. So equity is you take the guy's box.
The root of both of those words are equal. So any way that
Right.
it's trying to be
But
manipulated.
hear me out.
But anyways,
What is it? They're actually taking the guy's box.
Yeah.
It's like when they say defunding the police. Oh, it doesn't mean we're gonna like literally defund them and stuff. It's like, but look at what you're actually putting forward. Is you're saying we want to take what this person has and give it to that person. That's assuming we operate in a world of lack. Why do you have to take that guy something to give this person something?
Yeah.
Because isn't anything that you want, you can buy it with money, yeah? Why don't you just give that person money? I mean, they're saying that's reparations, right?
Yeah.
But why is it only black people? It doesn't make sense to do it that way. What about the native people? What about somebody who's like, I don't even know, like what's another one? What if they're just from like the Middle East? Do they get any kind of extra thing? Or is it just people who are from slavery? And like, what if you came here from like, you know, Africa, literally like in the last 20 years or something? Like, do you get it also? But what's interesting about this graphic is they made a new one. Okay, you guys can probably see it.
Yeah.
Y'all see it?
You're gonna have to describe it for Mitch and
I will.
Jess.
I can share my screen.
No. The reason why we're giving Asif a hard time about that is because it seems to make it take forever for like the video to convert before we upload it. So anyways, in this one, they removed the fence, they removed the boxes, and now they're all three standing on the baseball field in the outfield.
And it says liberation.
It says liberation.
We had a baseball game though.
But they're like not even in the outfield. They're like right behind the like second base.
Yeah.
And you can see the pitcher and then you can also see the crowd behind them. So they're in the stadium on the field.
Yeah, yeah. So there should be a fourth panel where they get escorted off the field.
And obviously,
Fine.
they're keeping the image the same. They're keeping the image the same so that they just to show that they're in the game, right? Like not in the game.
But it doesn't
But
make
they're not
sense.
in the game.
It doesn't make fucking sense though.
They're like blocking the people from catching fly balls. Like also look at that picture real quick, Drake. Look at how small the second baseman is. What is going on there?
Yeah, that's true.
He's like this tall.
Maybe they just became giants so they could just step on everyone else.
It's like they literally just removed the fence. It didn't change the perspective at all. But it looks like they're right behind second base.
Liberation is Mario, and you eat the mushroom and you grow big.
Exactly.
And you can crush your opposition.
And it makes no sense because what it should be is like they're all three the pitcher, they're all three the catcher, they're all three the batter. And like after the game, they're all three doing the press conference, and they're also the coach, and like they're also, you know, the owner of the team. Because like even the graphic itself, it's still just people watching a sports game.
Right.
Exactly.
It's
Which is
still
the giant
not
consumerism.
actually making any sense.
Like you're just a consumer. You're just a consumer, and you're allowed
But you're
to
a liberated consumer.
Liberation is being able to get into the baseball game and spend that money like everybody else. Wow.
In a bigger game of slavery, basically keeping everyone. to, oh yeah, watch baseball. Meanwhile, you're getting advertised to, and you're still working some job that you hate. It's true.
And you're probably still reacting to all the triggered words that are inside of you. You probably are malnourished. You're probably not educated, and you don't know how to think critically or process information around you. Wow, you're living such a great life. Yeah,
That's what the fundamental problem is, that like we can hope that media just starts promoting the right thing and then everybody starts doing the right thing. But the real problem is that, or the only way to actually equalize things is to educate everyone. The problem is if
people don't value
you
their education.
say that you're trying to educate other races, cultures, whatever, it's like a racist thing. But that's why the whole point of what we're doing is we're just looking for the people who are willing to like not just be a robot and not just like, oh, I got programmed with something, I saw this somewhere, it's active within me, and so that's what I'm going with. It's like, are you willing to question? Drake, you posted this video on social conformity from Brain Games. That was so funny. And I've heard that experiment before, but it's cool that they do it again, where it's like there's a bunch of people in a waiting room to like see the eye doctor or something, and they're all actors. And then one, this Asian lady, she goes in, but she's like she doesn't know what's going on, and randomly there's just like this boop, and then everybody stands up, not like robots.
Yeah.
They just like all just kind of like stand up and then sit down. And she kind of looks around. She's like, what? And then by the third beep, so there's a second beep, and then it happens again, and she's like, what's going on? And then by the third beep, she just starts doing it. And then one by one, they remove each person. Each person goes and sees the doctor and leaves, sees the doctor and leaves, and it's just her. Boop. And she does it by herself.
Yeah.
There's no one else there. And then
Yeah.
what do? They add another person who doesn't know what's going on. There's like,
they come from the outside.
Right, exactly. And then it's just like he sits like 2 seats away, and he's like a pretty like outgoing guy, and like, but like not like super macho or anything, just like a regular like kind of like, oh, like, hey, what, what's going, like, hey. And then she does it. She kind of looks at him. She's like, you hear the beep? She's like, boop. She's like, she just kind of does this, yeah.
Sorry.
And he was like, what like, why did you stand up? She's like, I don't know, just everybody else was doing it, so I started doing it too. And then by the second beep, he's like, boop. He's like, okay. And then eventually they fill the room and everybody's doing it. Everybody's doing it. And it's the same idea of that I talked about before of there's the 5 apes. Every time an ape climbs a ladder to get the fruit, the researchers spray the other apes. So they start beating up the apes when they get close to the ladder. And then they switch out all the apes. And eventually, every time somebody goes to climb the ladder, they beat up the apes, but they're not even getting sprayed anymore. The only solution to that is an ape or an individual questioning things and then developing their communication ability to translate that thought to other apes, people, individuals. It's literally the only solution. Any other way that we do it, like you start spraying the apes every time they beat up the other apes. So then they learn, okay, just stop fucking doing it. And then they can climb the ladder again. It's like, that's still just accepting that you're just a robot. If we're saying, hey, like we just have to wait for Trump to get elected because then he has that 4 years and then he'll take down the deep state and like reprogram like media and then that will fix it because then they'll stop promoting all this bullshit and then they'll start promoting like good stuff and then we'll have heaven on earth. It's like you're still just accepting that you mean nothing in all of this, that you're totally worthless and powerless. What we're suggesting is like, you're not just a fucking robot. You're not just, you don't just have to sit by like these kids on the sideline of this baseball game. Like the point isn't to be like, hey, look, I can sit by just as well as everybody else does. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. That's what like that picture is saying for those of you who don't know. But the only thing that will ever solve, even if that actually happened, Trump got elected or Biden got elected, it doesn't matter which side you are, and the world became a utopia or whatever the fuck, or, not the world became a utopia, but all the fighting stopped, your life would still suck.
Yeah, exactly.
because it's not them. It's not the racists, the white supremacists that are fucking your life up. It's you. You're still going to be uneducated. And even if we started giving money to everybody, you're just going to feel worthless because you can't do anything. That's what education is. What can you do? And if all you know how to do, in other words, all you got programmed with for what activism is yelling as loud as you can, or walking around and like spreading the word, it's like, sorry, you got programmed to be dumb.
Do you see this one I saw on Twitter with these girls on the side of the road and they were barking at these Trump supporters? Like, rah, 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 like in their face, like barking at them.
What?
Like,
I have no
Like a
idea.
dog?
Yeah, like a dog. Like they're just barking at him.
This is
And the
so
woman's
cute.
just like, like it's, you mentioned that point about education, Asif. And it's like,
Wow.
they talk about equity in education and so forth. And when you do all the research within the current sort of way of looking at education, it's not how can we take, let's say, for example, Black children and give them an effective vocabulary. It's how can we change the classroom so that it's not biased against them the way they are.
It's like, how can we make it so that if you get 40s on the test, that's actually like A+.
Like we shouldn't have such a high percentage of Black children going to detention for misbehavior. That's because the teacher's racist. We need to retrain the teacher to be able to manage the classroom without being racist.
Cameron, you're saying
That's
that
the discussion.
that's you're saying it like that's a bad thing. Like, are you against racial sensitivity?
Yeah.
Jeez, dude, you're a fucking asshole.
Hold on. Wait, Asif, stand back, stand by. Okay.
Ooh,
All right.
give me a name. Give me a name. Proud
Who
boy.
who should I denounce? Hitler? Okay, Hitler. Stand back, stand by.
I love it.
No, but again, I mentioned this elsewhere, but like in the handbooks of reading research, which I have back here, in the newest edition, which is like the past, it's probably up to like, it probably goes up to like 2014 or something like that. Or, it's not like super current because they still haven't released the newest one as far as I know, but it's kind of the contemporary way of looking at stuff. They're not really trying to do much research. The primary focus is not research on how can we improve education in the sense of teach people more effectively or something like you would think. The research is all around how can we change our approach in the classroom or the kind of questions we ask in the research so we are not imposing racial bias on things.
Fuck.
To the point where they say in there, they say, let's stop referring to the literacy deficit between Black and non-Black or, Asian, white, and so forth as a deficit and refer to it as a cultural difference. This kind of goes back to what we were saying from the very beginning. And I know it sounds crazy, like, no, that's some conspiracy. I mean, it's in the handbook. It's not like this. These are like all of the research that's done every year. They put it into a
from like
handbook.
1980 or 19
all the way back from the 80s,
70?
like 84, I think, up through now. Right. And then there's ones on early literacy and so forth. And it blew my mind because I'm like, wow, this philosophy of everything's racist, we need to not be racist, it's hurting children. Do you see what I'm saying? On the surface, like, how can you say all these things? You don't want people to learn to read. And it's like, no, if you apply these things, it's hurting people because the argument that is now being made is, and look, this is going to sound insensitive, so just brace yourself. Black people are fine the way they are. Who cares if they don't want to learn to read? Who cares if they have no discipline or self-control, or they're just loud and they want to yell and block traffic and do whatever the fuck they want to do and just be disorderly? That's their culture. It's okay. Stop being so racist and trying to impose your white supremacist culture on them. Stop trying to dominate and colonize them. Okay? Which is extreme. I know I'm doing a caricature, but that's in essence what it is. So if you were to say, look,
sound very extreme.
No, I know, but some it might seem extreme, but that is it's not even really, you can't even tell whether it's a caricature or not.
If you're not up to date, I was talking to Maylad about this. She's like, why the fuck would people have the definition of white supremacy that I was talking about? I was like, dude, it's on the Wikipedia. of academic usage, right? She was like,
that, but that is the way it's being used.
But because and the point I was bringing up to her was like, she was like, yeah, but how many people actually look at that and have that definition inside of them? I'm like, okay, well, have you seen that picture of? Okay, I said, well, I was thinking about it. I was like, okay, yeah, but I know it is, even though people don't know it, right?
They don't know it. Yeah,
and that's the thing. It's like, then why are they calling black people white supremacists? Because I was like, Mela, like. I was like, what do you think of white supremacists? She's like, people who fucking hate black, like think white is superior race.
What it actually is, yeah.
Can a black person be a white supremacist? Obviously not, right? And so, like, obviously the point still stands that we talked about before. It's not like everybody who actually thinks like that. We just see the extremes of it on Facebook and things like that. But the study, there was a study that showed that over 2/3 or 66% of Americans support Black Lives Matter, which is.
When was this study that you saw?
Huh?
When did you see this study?
I saw this.
I saw it somewhere as well.
I saw an article on it like 2 days ago, and I don't know when the study was taken. I don't know when the study was taken. And it's probably a small sample size. Like, man, I've been learning a lot about how studies.
They just polled people who went to Harvard.
Exactly, right? But the point is, it's like, what she was saying makes sense. It's like, yeah, like who would accept that? But you don't accept it based off the definition. You accept it based off, is it politically correct? And then she was like, it clicked for her when she was like, true, like they're calling Candace Owens, a black woman, white supremacist, and Ben Shapiro, a Jewish man, neo-Nazi.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, it doesn't make any fucking sense. And so for the people who are listening to this and being like, dude, like, what are you guys talking about? I know that you're not following what's going on. Because, for example, the modern reading research, I know you went through the volumes. And the coolest part of it, I think this is the perfect way to see it, is if we look at it collectively, everything together, every individual part, what's going on in the individuals, as well as what's going on throughout the system, being reflected in our research, is we've all accepted collectively we can't change. It's like... Yeah. You know how before it was like, oh my God, helicopter parenting. Like, what are you going to do? Fucking babysit your kids? Like, wrap everything in bubble wrap and make sure that nothing can harm them? Like, that's so dumb. It's like, that has become our entire culture. Make sure that we don't challenge anybody. Make sure we don't enforce anything. And we were seeing it as time goes on. Because, Drake has been tech tutor for about like 2 years or so, right?
Almost 3
years, right? And it's like being on the distributor calls, right? We're seeing how we're doing the research on the Head Start program. Kids are, the reading levels are dropping. Kids are getting stupider, but we're only taking them when they're, 6 or 7 years old or 5 or 6 years old, right? Then I know what we have to do. It just makes sense. Start getting them in school sooner, because that, that'll up their grades. They implement a program that takes them 2 years sooner. What happens, Cameron?
I can tell you what.
Well, nothing happens.
Nothing happens.
Doesn't have not the effect that they were saying they would have.
Mm-hmm.
It does have an effect. It's just not the effect that they're promoting.
And so then you carry on. You go to Andrew Yang. He runs for president. And that was like last year, right? And what he was talking about is how automation is going to take over everything. And there's going to be so many fucking people without jobs, and everyone's going to be fucked, right? And there's going to be civil unrest because people aren't working, and people get pissed off when they're not working because they don't have purpose, right? All these things. And he says, he goes to the White House. He says, guys, this is a huge problem. What are we going to do? He gets 3 answers, right? One of them is, don't talk about that. The other one is, we should look into that. And the third one is re-education. Duh. So Andrew was like, okay, cool. Okay, now that you know what, that kind of makes sense. Re-education, right? You retool the individual so that they can do something different. And he looks up the numbers for him. Do you guys hear this? What the numbers are on re-education?
Oh, they're terrible.
He basically, what they're saying is, after he looked at he's all numbers guy, right? The hat was M-A-T-H, math, right? Make America think again, or make America
talk about stereotypes. It's like, come on,
think harder.
Yeah,
think harder.
Exactly. And so what he finds is that the success rate of re-educating people is 0 to 15%. 0 to 15%. Best case scenario, you put through 1,000 people, 150 of them, they're good to go. They went from truck driver to coder or like whatever, you know?
Hey, this is
And
pretty
Worst case
similar.
scenario, you put 1,000 people through, you train them, you educate them, everything. None of them can do anything different. So what does that show? It shows that everything that we think about, collectively, right? It's like our confidence in our ability to change. What are we showing throughout? Like, what are we talking about in Technitude, right? It's like the number one reason why the elites spend so much money, all of their money, over $30,000 per month on their child's education, is just to maintain their confidence in their ability to learn, their confidence in their ability to change, to adapt to what's going on in their world. And it's the same thing when they ask, the Harvard alumni or, somebody from Harvard, they're like, what's different in the Harvard education? The guy's like, nothing. It's who you're around, right? It's the same because you think of yourself, you associate with those people. It's the same thing, right? It's like, what's different that if you're paying $30,000 a month, are you getting this greater education? You're learning cooler stuff? I'm like, no, the way you feel or the way you see yourself, the esteem or the worth that you place on your self-value, right? And your ability to change and learn and adapt, it's very high. And because of that, you can do a lot more. But we want the other way.
But also, just to add to that real quick, with the Harvard thing, your ability to process information is already set by the time you got to Harvard.
Right.
You had to get into Harvard. So yes, like you're not learning any special algebra or something like that at Harvard, but you're around people who are at your level of processing ability. And that all happens in the very beginning, in the first 7 years or less of your life. Like we always talk about with my son, Max, for example, because he's about to turn 4. He can already do math. He can already multiply, divide, add, subtract. Drake, that game I sent you, right?
Yeah.
That Bomb Squad Academy, right? Like he and I play that game. I just turned off
Bomb Squad Academy.
You guys should look it up. You can get it on your iPhone.
Dude, it is such an intricate game. Like
all it is, it's like you're diffusing these bombs.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But I turned off the sound effects, so like when it blows up, it's like not impulsing with like a constant like anxiety point. I turned off all the sound effects and music. So from that perspective, all it is you're just trying to figure out how to make a certain light up on a electrical circuit. And how not to have certain ones light up. So it's in essence like electronic circuits, right? And because he already has all the vocabulary, I don't remember how I saw it. I think I was looking at something, looking up electronics or something, and that came up. And then he was like, "What's that?" And I was like, "Oh, let's check it out." So we did all that, and we've played through the entire game, right? And mostly it was me initially, and now he's playing back through it himself with me there, playing with him, and I don't know how far have you played on it, Drake? Very much of it?
Yeah, I've gotten through like 3 levels of it.
So he's already gotten through 2 levels on his own.
Nice.
Right? Sometimes he'll have to ask me for help, but I'll just like ask him questions about like, okay, well, let's trace this wire back. Where is it getting blocked? And he'll be like, oh. I'm like, now what happens if you turn that though? What's it going to do? So he like can like, because he doesn't necessarily have the working memory to like see all of it at once, right? Yeah. But he went through so much of it just himself. And I was like, holy shit. But it's like, you have to understand basic electronics and they explain it to you, if you don't already know it, but he's not even 4. And he understands like resistors, capacitors, all the different components they have. Right. And I remember yesterday we were doing it and there was like on a tutorial section, because every once in a while they'll give you a tutorial on the new components they're going to introduce. It like popped up with this message and it was some long sentence. And I'm gonna have to go back and look at it and figure out what it was. But it said something I would say is a pretty complex sentence. And it even had a word that I can't remember what it was, but it was like, a pretty long word, like readjustment or, it wasn't that word, but it was something like that where, not like a difficult word to understand, but you wouldn't expect a child to be able to read it if they'd never seen it or something, And it was some kind of word, but it was a whole sentence. And when it popped up, because it was important to understand, I said, Max, what does that say? And he read the whole sentence out loud. And then he was like, oh, okay. Like he understood it, right? And I was like, holy shit, man. Like he read that sentence You know, like he understands what's going on here.
That's
Like
it.
he can, I mean, anybody who's watching, you can there's a free version. I think if you pay for it, it just gives you more levels and it's like $3, but just get the free one and you'll see like, it's not a simple game at all. In fact, you'll see it's pretty complex. I mean, pretty complex.
Yeah.
Not just like, oh no, it's kind of complex. Like it's a pretty complex game.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating because he doesn't get bored. He'll sit there and he'll keep asking me to play and he wants to do the next one and he wants to talk about it and understand what everything's going on and everything. And
Thanks.
I guess I'm assuming I brought it up because it's like you can develop a child's vocabulary and reading ability and comprehension and interest in things that are technical and all of that at a very young age. I wasn't doing anything close to that when I was his age, but I didn't have techno tutor.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't matter if the kid's white or black or Asian. It doesn't matter what their race is. All that's going to matter is at an individual level, the child individually is going to have a different speed at which they learn. You know, so one kid using techno tutor might be where Max is at when they're 5 or 6, or maybe when they're younger than him. You know, like Seneca, for example, is already beyond. Like I remember you were here when Max turned 2.
Yeah.
Right, Drake?
Yeah.
I don't remember how much he was talking then. Like probably a little bit.
He talked
Do you remember?
Yeah.
A little bit?
Yeah. I was I remember being impressed at Max just because when we got from the airport, he recognized, like he knew my name by the time we got to the door, and I was like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And then the other point was, you know, he had shown me that he mastered the alphabet and his numbers, and I was like, that's crazy too. And then going outside with him, and he would stop and say, the tree's blowing, and you could say like, what's blowing the trees? And he'd say the wind. And then another thing was when I was telling him about, look at these leaves on this bush, how it's like something's eating these leaves. You see all these holes, something's eating these leaves. And he turned to me and he goes, caterpillar. And I'm like, the hell?
Yeah. Okay, I appreciate you sharing that because I was trying to remember. I'm trying to place where
benchmark
Max was at this age because I know where Seneca's at now.
Yeah.
And you guys are all coming down in into November, so you'll see.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can have a full-on conversation with Seneca. You know, like the other day we were at Kurt's house actually, and they had some golf clubs, like kids golf clubs, and she was trying to hold it at the very like end of the golf club and swing it, but it was too heavy. And I didn't even gesture. I just said, Seneca, hold it more in the middle. And she looks at me and she like grabs it in the middle. She goes like this. And I was like, yeah. And then she was doing it because it's more balanced, right? And I was like, like it always surprises me because I just assume she can understand complex things, and then I just do it. And if she didn't understand me, I'd go over and I'd show her. You know what I mean?
Right.
But so it's like I always try to test to see like what do they know, because it's not always obvious, you know.
Yeah.
But she'll talk to you like she's definitely even more advanced than where Max is at. And my point being that each person's going to have a different like kind of speed at which they pick up things and develop and so forth, and that's okay. The problem is, let's say on average, genetically, some genetic lines, and I'm not just talking about race like black or white, I'm saying even individual family lines within a race, people maybe on average learn at a faster rate. Now you could see that could maybe statistically differ over different races, but it could also differ within families. It can differ within a family and so forth, right? If a person learns at a different rate and then you put them into an environment that doesn't teach them anything, but is only really just testing to see where they're at, which is what the education system does. In other words, when you're in school, the only people who really learn anything are the ones who already learn really fast. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. If you're quick, now I'm not saying those people even actually learn anything, but they're able to pick it up more quickly and repeat it back in time for the test. That was the advantage I had in school, right? I could very quickly learn things, even if I didn't really fully understand it. I could learn the words enough and then memorize it enough to spit it back and get the A and all that stuff. But other people don't have that. And if you don't have that ability and you go to school, you're like, fuck this. They could say something to you 4 times, you still don't understand it. You're like, fuck this. And I've worked with students like that, where it's like they took a long time to understand something. But imagine, regardless of each child where they're at, if someone's there with them every single day and developing their vocabulary to the point where, regardless of when they get to the same level that Max is at almost 4, they get to that level. And then they develop the next level of vocabulary. In other words, by the time, it's not even about by the time, it's eventually, because there's focus and there's discipline and there's support, they eventually understand everything they need to know to function in this world effectively and as an equal. You see what I mean? That's what TechnoTutor gives the ability to do. None of that is applied in the education system.
And
So it's like, yeah.
The key point within that is, for those who don't have kids right now, is the reason they learn to function as an equal is because Cameron and Katie are treating them as if they're equal.
Yes, but it's
That's
because
like
they're
half-
getting they're equalizing their vocabulary to what's around them. So
And I
yes,
think
it
that was
also
like-
is how we're treating them.
Uh-huh.
That's a prerequisite. You can't treat the child like they're inferior. I mean, if you use TechnoTutor with the child and you still treat them poorly, they're still going to advance beyond where they would have.
Yeah.
Because they're getting vocabulary, but they're still going to have some dysfunctional psychological problems because of the way you treated them. But the way we treat them is not why they're so smart, although it's a prerequisite, because it's also their emotional stability and so forth. And you guys will see that when you're here. It's like, it's really interesting to see how Seneca and Max work together. Because she'll like we'll be sitting on the couch and I'll be sitting there with both of them reading, and Seneca will crawl over me and then just hug Max, you know, and he'll just be like, oh, thanks for the hug, Seneca, you know. And like when she's trying to get in the car, it's like way too tall for her. He's like, oh, let me come help her. And he'll like try to help her up or something. Or if she's like stuck on the stool and she can't get down, he'll go and he'll pick her up and put her down. And it's not all the time. And we're not expecting him to do it. We're not telling him to do it. You just see like the natural sort of way they interact together because the way we treat them and so forth. Right. But also it's like Seneca can keep up, you know. When Max is doing his TechnoTutor, she's right there next to him and she's saying the words as he's saying, you know, so she's also getting all of that benefit as well. Right. And I'll watch Max still do the TechnoTutor with her. Like he'll open up the TechnoTutor and make a list and sit there with her and do it, you know, and that's like just something they do sometimes, you know. But the point is, I guess what I'm really getting at is the whole, what's actually causing all the inequality and everything and all the different races and people and everything is just, we don't have everybody at a sufficient level that we're all on the same page. So even if you do all the things like someone mentioned earlier that is being asked, it won't change anything. Even if you get rid of all the white people and all the white supremacists and all this stuff, it's not going to make life better for anybody, because that's not an active thing. That's just an absence of something. And unfortunately, it's fascinating because I was saying this earlier, the education system is designed by the supposed white supremacists who have structurally built in a system that's racist, right? Where does the white supremacy term come from that you were talking about, Asif? Like those definitions.
The academic usage?
Right. Comes from the academics.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's the Harvard, that's the Columbia, that's the Princeton.
Yeah, and you can see it's
those are the people
making the textbooks and
they're programming society
yeah.
to speak about everybody being racist and society being racist. Who runs those institutions? What foundations fund them?
Huh.
Do you see what I'm saying? It's the elite trying to create a racial division of society. And then also within it, embedding all this information where it's like trap doors, you can't get out of it. Because now we're so far into it that if you suggest, no, we need to just stop for a moment and make sure every black child has the same education as every white child. And like, they should have a high vocabulary and they should love reading and science and all this stuff. Like, whoa, science? You're talking about scientific method? That's totally biased, colonizing, you know, colonist thinking. And I just saw on Twitter, I think it's the Mathematical Association of America, the MAA, I think it's called. It's like the major mathematics. In fact, I have one of their books somewhere up there. But anyways, it's like the major mathematics foundation or association are making a tweet saying that there's inherent racial bias in mathematics. right? And Eric Weinstein was like, okay, so what's the basis? Like, are you talking about like homomorphisms in topological algebra, or whatever? He's like going off on us. Is it somewhere in there? Like, where's the actual bias in the actual mathematics, right? And it's like, yeah, like, what are you talking about? I mean, I could understand the application of it could in a way be biased or racist or something like that, but the actual mathematics, think about it. Everything, it's like, okay, we have a system. The only thing wrong with it is that the value of money is not every life form equally. The value is only accumulating more money, whoever can do it, and whoever can accumulate more money for other people, do that, and it's all limited. And we have to keep it limited. And if you understand the rules, you understand it, and we'll just keep it into the hands of a few. That's the rules. If we were to change that and say the value is, the purpose of money is to make sure that all life forms have what they need. So every decision you make with money should reinforce that and support that point. I mean, don't you think that would just change everything? You see what I mean? People's decisions would be different. It's like, why do people value having a pair of Air Jordans? And they're created with slave labor.
Mm-hmm.
But who is it that values the slave? Who is it that values the Air Jordans the most?
The slaves.
The owner of the company, because they're making money off the people.
No, it's a certain culture that really likes basketball.
Yeah, it's the people saying they should get reparations for slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Like benefiting from slavery.
Why is black culture so embedded with you have to have Gucci and Versace or whatever they are, when that's clearly just what a bunch of white people created? Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying there's value in it. It's just stupid fashion bullshit, right? But what I'm saying is, like, the people who you would think would be the most against Nike because it's using slave labor and so forth, and iPhones and all that stuff. It's like, no, that's really important. Meaning, everybody in the world is equally participating in the system that we're in because they're not questioning the fundamental assumptions of it. It's like self-interest.
You're saying that fashion has
fascist.
no value?
Yeah.
I'm saying when fashion justifies abuse, it doesn't have value, right? I don't have a problem with people having fashion preferences when they're not putting it above everybody having what they need.
Yeah.
So it's like, how can you on the one hand say white supremacist, white racial, structural racism, slavery, we need to have reparations, all this stuff, but also I want to wear Nikes. Like, it doesn't make sense. It's like that person didn't think it through. And that person, though, who is in that literal character that I'm describing, is just probably an average person who values what they value because it has an emotional value to them. And then over on this side, they see other people who they have envy, rightfully so, that these people don't have that they don't have what those people have. And they're being told that this is the reason why. So of course that anger is going to, and also their desire for more of this is like, wait, those people are the reason I can't have more of the thing I want. Okay. That makes sense. Like, it's just that simple. But who are the people behind the scenes saying structural racism? Do you think a uneducated person who barely makes minimum wage came up with the term structural racism?
No.
Who comes up with a term like that?
Someone in academia
who literally benefited from the structurally racist system,
right?
Who is the embodiment of it, who's the essence of it, and is saying, look at my authority in the system as why you should listen to what I'm saying, and therefore it has all this validity and so forth. But then there's no solution. There's no real solution. The solutions are always just the word justice.
Justice.
But justice is not a system. It's an idea. It's just like hope. It's just become the new hope. It's become the new change. Justice.
Yes, we can.
And if you go read like a modern paper in the social sciences, you know how many times you'll see the word justice? It's just like every other freaking word at this point. It doesn't mean anything. you know, and who's actually willing to sit down and go through, okay, what does everybody need? Like, doesn't matter your race. Now, if there are biological differences between people, not races, but people, then they would have different biological needs. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how can we also take that into account? How can we also take into account emotional needs and things like that? All of those things are relevant, but none of that's being discussed. And so all it is like, I'm telling you guys, after Trump, if he loses, then, which he won't, but if he did, this whole discussion would go away. I wouldn't say it would go away. It would become a different discussion. It would become more a discussion of,
I think it
would become more a discussion of like, we've already achieved the revolution.
Yeah.
It's already done. Now get in line.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? It wouldn't be like anymore trying to prove that it's happening. It's just like in 1984. Once they do the revolution, the past is gone.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? And then it will just become a point of political correctness. And I think that's also why there's the defund the police thing, you know? It's like, get rid of all the good old boys and the racists and the rednecks out of the police force and all the racists, so we can just have a police force of people who will go along with political correctness. You see what I'm saying? Like, seriously, is that what you want as your police? Like, you show up to your house and you're like, yes, officer, a black person, he was black, and or he was a woman or a Mexican or this or that. And they're like, oh, excuse me, sir, hold on. You need to use racially sensitive language. Why are you misgender? You're assuming their gender? And you're like, dude, this person just like kidnapped my child. You know, you're trying to describe it or something. And then they're like literally going to jail because you called the police on a black person and you're white or something. It sounds crazy. It sounds extreme, but that is where things are going.
Yeah.
It's going to the point where people imagined that it was. Do you see what I mean? Let's actually enslave people based on their race. Because in the past, it wasn't based on race. It was based on just economics. So it's like the next evolution of it. And then the people will just forget about the fact that we're all enslaved to the economic system.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to
look right past that. We already finished racism.
Now is when we're compounding to the point where there's like, it's a complete other layer that hides the fundamental problem. It's like this whole other fucking game.
Exactly. That's what I see is happening right now. And I don't see anyone else. I mean, look at it. Andrew Yang was talking about basic income. What happened to that discussion?
Fugazi.
Gone. No one's talking about it anymore. It's like, why isn't that a basic platform? If Biden wanted to win, that's what I would be doing if I was him.
Done.
I'd be like, that's the only thing that I'm focusing on right now. Everybody gets basic income. How could anyone complain about that? How could even somebody who wants reparations complain about that?
No one could complain about that.
You got to get more of black people.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Okay. It's fine. You get an extra $500 a month. Fine. Who cares? We're printing it out of the fucking Federal Reserve anyways. You know, the Treasury or whatever. Like, we're just printing it out of nowhere.
I wonder why they're not doing that.
Because that's not the point of of that agenda. That's the corporate agenda.
Mm.
That's crazy. Why didn't Andrew Yang?
There's more to it, but I don't want to go into it in this podcast. Yeah. That'll have to be behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Why do you think they want everybody to get that vaccine?
Control.
Yeah, but a lot of these people believe that the Earth is overpopulated.
That is
These like super elites. That's what they believe.
You think so?
Absolutely, 100%. They say it. It's like, okay, you know how we always talk about with the education system? We're like, guys, the fucking elite people who created the education system said this is why they created it. They wrote the fucking books. They said we wanted a system to create factory workers. Like, and we need also office managers and all this other stuff too. So we have to create an education system that'll filter people and create that structure for us. Because otherwise we want to take business and industry to the next level. Society is not structured in a way where people are there's no workers. There's just people on their family farms or working in guilds or trades and stuff like that. Nobody's going, oh, I don't have any skills. I just, please give me a job. Just tell me what to do. So they're like, okay, let's create an education system. Let's take the kids away from the parents so they have no stability. Their parents have no more influence over them. And then let's just put them through a system where at the end of it, they feel totally inadequate to deal with life and they have to look for a job. So then they're going to come to us and be like, hey, I got a job for you. That's how we created this industrial society. Now, what's going on? They're like, all right, we want to take business to the next level. Why are we having to fucking pay for healthcare and workers? And Amazon is so funny because they seem like they're the biggest progressive thing. Well, not Amazon, but Washington Post, who is owned by Jeff Bezos, right? They act like it's like, oh, they're all for like the left and progressivism and stuff. But Amazon is super anti-union.
Yeah.
Into what?
Anti-union. They're super anti-union. And they're the people who work there. You talk to people who work in Amazon. It's terrible, right? So all they wanting to do is just replace everybody with machines and AI and everything.
That's what they're gonna do.
That is what they're doing. So now the problem is we have too many people on the planet, apparently. Why? How do you know that's true? According to what they believe.
How do you know that's what they believe?
No, what I mean is, how do you know? Yeah, I guess that's what I mean. But
So
it's
say
like,
it again.
what I'm saying
How do
is,
you know that they believe there's too many people on the planet?
how do you know that their solution is to reduce the population? That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Because what happens the moment we have full automation?
A lot of unrest.
And no one has any jobs, right? No one has any money.
Mhm.
Right.
So how are they going to buy the products?
They're not.
You see what I mean? So it's like, well, what's the obvious solution there?
Give them the money.
No,
So
the obvious solution from the elite perspective is just reduce the population down to the size that we want that fits into our models and so forth. That's it. Their solution is not let's make this a utopia on earth for everybody.
I was thinking it'd be more like a Wall-E thing where everyone's just so dumbed down and distracted and just like gets enough that they just are existing and not questioning anything.
But at that point, why would you even need all these people?
Mm-hmm.
And they're just hold on, think about it. They're just going to consume more resources, aren't they? And just going to keep growing and growing and growing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not making this up. This is what the people in those positions are saying.
Do you have examples? Because I've heard Bill Gates talk about it. Is there others?
Yeah.
Lots of them. Yeah. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but Stefan Manu had this really good discussion on the creation of the European Union.
Mm-hmm.
And like what was the whole starting point behind it and everything, but I don't remember what the name of that talk was. But that one was pretty good.
Basically, it's like the globalist agenda to just take down as many borders and create one government.
Yeah. And that's really difficult to manage when you have all these different diverse cultures and you have people spread out everywhere. So it's like, imagine if you were in that situation, what would you do? If you were like, we don't want to leave anything up to chance. It's just the technology wasn't there before because you needed people to do all the work. So all I'm saying is, just from a general perspective, is those are the same people who are pushing the racism and all this stuff. How do you know? Because BLM, the NFL, the NBA, every company on the planet, they're all going along with it. So it fits into their self-interest, and they're all run by the same 5 companies anyways. You know what I mean? It's not like it's all these different diverse companies. And any company who's like, dude, I'm not participating in that, I'm doing this, they're like, okay, you don't get to play anymore. That's what it comes down to. So if you have, for example, United States goes away, name one country on this planet that says, no, the individual is the most important thing. They have more rights than a corporation.
Well, you know what's going on in Tunisia, right?
What?
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, I was like, really? You see what I'm saying? Like, then it's done.
Yeah.
That's what people want. But
Let's
that's
see.
what's being argued for. It's like they don't realize what they're actually arguing for. They say, well, the United States is racist and all this stuff. And it's like, everybody is. If you're gonna go to the level of arguing at an academic level, everybody is. I mean, think about how we treat animals. Like, give me a break. So there's no solution within any of that stuff. And at the end of the day, it's all comes down to education and equalizing that. Because when a person can think logically, and when I say logically, I also mean using common sense. Because if you don't use common sense, you can argue anything on a logical basis, just depending on what is your basic assumption. You know what I mean? And so like with the white supremacy and all this stuff, it's like, it's logical actually to a certain degree. To a certain degree, it is logical, but it's like based on certain assumptions. And the most primary assumption is people can't change. But then also at the same time, they think people can change. It's just only the people who are racist need to change, I guess. You know what I mean?
That's why what we're doing is so fundamental, not for just like you to get what you want out of life, but to maintain individual freedom, but to also support the well-being of everybody. Is the thing that this is the result of our confidence in our ability to change being totally obliterated. And the whole point of Self-Perfected is to bridge the gap between what you need to know to be successful. In other words, to understanding how reality really works and where you're at now. That's why we created the group Self-Perfected, is to guide you in a step-by-step manner to this is how reality actually works. If you're listening to this podcast, I mean, you're probably already in there. If you're not, it's probably fucking you right up, which is a good thing because that should give you the idea of, I mean, honestly, the way we choose what to talk about on this podcast is by seeing all the bullshit that we were programmed with, that we've either, some of us have worked through and some of us haven't, where the result of talking about it is it's uncomfortable and it challenges us. And there's a lot of beliefs around it that don't really make any fucking sense. That's what we talk about. Because we know that if it's inside of me, it's probably inside of you too. And the only way, there's no other way, going to some course or doing some technique or whatever, it's not going to change your ability to process information. It's not going to change your ability to question things on a greater scale. The only way you can do that is if you exercise your will. And the only way you'll be able to understand the difference between when you're making a decision yourself or when you're just going along with what's going on inside of you that you're already programmed with like a robot is if you've been through DIP Lite, if you're using TechnoTutor, if you're in that Self-Perfected group where we're constantly having weekly global hangouts where we're challenging each other. We're challenging these points inside of each of us that thinks, oh, no, this is the way how reality works, but my life isn't working. I mean, it seems like I have all these beliefs about how reality works, yet I still can't even function basically.
Or like make consistent money.
Literally make consistent money and have consistent emotions.
But as if it sounds like you're just promoting your product.
It's funny.
Because it's
we have a responsibility to do that.
You know, it's a great point, right? But what would you say to, could you guys imagine, actually for real, okay? Have you ever challenged somebody on that point of like, hey, like I know people who can cure cancer. Have you guys ever said that to anybody?
People say that?
Have you ever said that to anybody?
That I can cure cancer?
Not that you can cure cancer. You don't like cure cancer. But like I've yeah, I wish everybody saw that. Mitchell
We're not allowed to say if we can. It's illegal.
Yeah.
But right, exactly true. But seriously, it's like I remember this point of I'm like, yeah, no, I know individuals who've walked me through the process of curing cancer and that the results that they've had and things like that. I'm not gonna say anybody's names. But the point is when you suggest that you have the cure for cancer, people say basically within themselves, fuck you. Mm-hmm. Fuck you for even pretending that you know.
But now go to a doctor and do that.
You know how much money goes into solving cancer? Do you know how much research goes into solving cancer? And you're telling me that all of them can't figure it out, but you and your friends can fucking figure it out? So within ourselves as individuals, right? It's like, yeah, is it going to be difficult suggesting that we actually know how to fix anxiety? Not FDA approved. That we actually know.
Hold on. We're not saying we can fix anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
We can't fix your anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
You have to
We're
do
saying
it yourself.
you can. Okay.
As in, there's a process that through.
See, but you don't even need to go into that. All I'm saying is you can take responsibility and fix your anxiety. Okay. I don't even need to tell you how to do it. All we're suggesting is if you develop self-awareness and you look at where your anxiety is coming from and then you change that, it'll change. Okay. If you believe that's going to come from a drug, then you're not being self-honest, because that's just going to cover up the symptom. You have to look at what's the pattern that's creating it. Right. But all of that kind of stuff, it's like, I'm not even going to go there, because we're not trying to sell anyone on why anything we're saying works. If you want to have that conversation, you have to talk to someone individually. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We don't need to do that. And to Justice's point, yeah, we are promoting a product. Like, obviously, anybody who would react to that, they probably just broke, or they have something that they're trying to promote, or they're trying to get followers. So it's like, it really is irrelevant if people feel that way, because they're not ready for this. If someone feels that and they're like, oh, you guys are just trying to sell me on something, it's like, then just go away. Go back to your miserable life. Don't be a part of the solution. And by the way, this isn't for everybody. It's really not for everybody. This is only for people who want to stand up and take responsibility. If you're in a position where you can't do that, this isn't for you. You'll just have to wait until the system changes, I suppose. You know, but at the same time, I can't say for any individual person if it's for them or not. You know what I mean? I just know it's not for everybody. We don't even need everybody to do it. We don't need everybody in the world to go into politics. What would be the point of that? We just need enough people, which is not that many, to go into the system and change what needs to be changed. That's a specific task. It's kind of like you don't need everybody to be a firefighter. You only need so many. There's a specific task that has a specific limitation.
It kind of seems like we need everyone to be right now.
What?
It kind of seems like we need everyone to be a firefighter right now.
Yeah, right now, if you're living in Portland
Yeah,
or in
Cali.
Minneapolis, yeah.
Or California.
But do you see what I'm saying, though? I'm not just saying that as some kind of tactic. It's like we really don't need everybody. We're just looking for people, and it's like it's cool to be like really triggering and just say stuff that you're not supposed to say. Because isn't it funny? It's like, why aren't you allowed to say certain things? That's so weird. You know, you're not allowed to say something like, oh, my feelings are going to be hurt. It's like, well, you're hurting my feelings by saying I can't say something, so you're doing it. You know, but that's not the logic, is it? It's only if it's politically correct. Meaning, what does it mean if something's politically correct? It means the elite want you to say it. And if it's not politically correct, it means the elite don't want you to say it. So just realize that when you're fighting the slave masters and the racial people and all this stuff, anything you're saying that if it's like, if CNN says you're allowed to say it, yeah, you're fighting for the slave masters.
Or
You're
basically
not on the correct
anything on your Twitter feed is designed for you to see it, likely. So if you're generally getting it from anything outside of your logic and common sense, then yeah, you're probably it's probably not even in your best interest.
And you have to really apply self-honesty within it.
And to that point, it's like that I was talking about before is just, yeah, like the cure for the cancer inside of you is here, and you can take it if you want or not. Doesn't matter. We don't need everyone to take it for enough people to be like, oh yeah, like this shit is pretty fucked up and I can actually take responsibility for it. It's like, think about just the amount of people when Cameron's saying, you know, the NBA and the NFL and all this stuff. It's like all these companies, they're just controlled by 5 huge companies or whatever the case may be. There's not that many people that actually run things. Like if you even just look at the number of where we get information from, is it from 1,000 different things? No, it's 5 mediums or media, right? So it's like, okay, so we just control those. Then we get to disseminate the information. But realize, yeah. At the end of the day, we're not just looking to create it so, oh, now we're at the top and everyone else is fucked. That's where it begins. Because the reason that everybody's believing what they believe in now is just because there's a group of people who are like, yo, how do we make sure that our shit's good and everybody else stays fucking retarded, right? It's like because that ensures that we're just going to keep running in circles around by ourselves down here. Well, they actually get to enjoy lives. Well, we're focused on like, oh, fuck, I don't know if I'm like a boy or a girl, or if I don't know I'm supposed to call this person a boy or a girl. I don't know. Something in between. It's like imagine buying a house and you move in and then now you have to like the water lines aren't there. And like the waste piping isn't there. It's like now you have to focus like a bunch of time on like setting that up and like running it to the house. When before it was just like you move into the house, it's ready to go, and then you move forward with your life. It's like we're regressing to fighting about all this dumb bullshit that is like taking us back. It's like before we could talk, and it was like what issues you're allowed to talk about, what issues you're not allowed to talk about. But now it's like we can't even talk. It's we're only talking about, are you allowed to talk? That's where we're at now. It's like, are you allowed to talk? Are you white? Okay, yeah. So your opinion's invalidated, but it's not racist that I'm saying.
Yeah,
that.
I'm totally not being racist right now, but seriously, you can't talk because you're white.
Yeah, exactly, right? So like that's where we're at. And so at the end of the day, it's like it
just join the fucking Facebook group.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. Talk about stuff for real and
if you're
stop
white,
listening
black,
to this.
Asian, whatever, Spanish, Mexican, just get on the fucking Friday.
Just get on there. We have people of all races and genders.
Yeah, and we all verbally abuse each other, and it's great.
Yes.
Because the point is, within that group, we don't prioritize how we feel.
Right.
It's not to say that, oh, so everybody feels like shit and we're all just fucking, we don't prioritize it. Our number one priority, honestly speaking, our number one priority is making sure you feel good long term. How are you setting yourself up to win in the future? Because if you just accept me going out to do this thing now makes me feel bad, that's what's creating you feeling bad perpetually because you're not changing. Versus if you're a part of a group that can support you to overcome that, then you set yourself to win in the future. And right now, what we're doing as a society is fucking guaranteeing that we don't win in the future. So yeah, join the group, self-perfected.com. There's some good resources there, free resources. And then from the free resources, you can see the Facebook group. And in the Facebook group, you click on request. And then from the request, there's a couple of questions you answer.
And you need to answer.
You have to answer. If you don't, I'll send you a nice message. I'll be nice. Yeah. Because it is about feelings at the end of the day. Once you get it, it's actually all about feelings.
And for everybody else, just stand back and stand by. All right.
Thanks, everybody.
See you next time.
Bye.